taken in closed session. Go to agenda 2.4. This is our emergency additions or modifications to tonight's agenda. Looking at the board, are there any emergency changes or modifications to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, would someone like to move to approve tonight's agenda? So moved by Trustee Smith. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Brainy. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes, that passes 5-0. Thank you. Now we'll go on to the approval of the minutes from last month's meeting. Are there any questions, concerns, comments from the board?
There were a couple typographical errors, but we understand those have been corrected. So with those corrections, I'd move that we approve the minutes.
So moved by Trustee Smith. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Brainy. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. That passes 5-0. Thank you. Now we'll go on to agenda item 4. This is our correspondence regarding important district matters. We did have a academic year assignment monitoring outcomes. That's in the agenda. Information item, no action there. Now we'll go on to agenda item 5. This is our monthly communications. First, we'll start with public comments. I have not received any speaker cards, so we will move on to our employee union president's comments. We do not, unfortunately, have California School Employee Association CSEA President Dolores Johnson here tonight. So we'll move on to OHI, Federation of Teachers, OFT President Richard Byrd. Thank you for being here with us, President Byrd. As always, you have 5 minutes once you begin.
Well, this is new. Okay, cool. Good evening, everyone. Well, as I have done the past couple of months, fortunately, it's been pretty quiet in terms of union happenings. I had a meeting with Dr. Knox yesterday. We discussed some minor issues, and actually, I was actually pleasantly surprised to find that one had been resolved, like as of this morning, which was always really nice. I would just like to, yeah. Sorry, I've been spending the last several days doing report cards. It is literally the hardest part of my job, and I stand in front of 30 kids every single day. So it's been a tribulation to say the least. So my brain is a little jumbled. But that being said, I kind of wanted to get up here and just reflect for my own well-being. I have to first begin by saying my heart is really going out right now to our contiguous districts. What's happening in Ventura and Oxnard and Santa Paula is really heartbreaking. This time of year, as we know, is very hard for teachers, and most boards have to make very serious decisions about staff reductions, and I think it comes to no surprise for us here in this district what those districts are currently going through. It does not to make light of the situation, but I think, having watched several board meetings and the unfolding, I don't want to say drama, but the unfolding news that keeps coming out in terms of these proposed budget shortfalls, I've been thinking on it a lot, and it is very heartbreaking. And, I've had to field calls from some teachers that have gotten RIF notices in our district. And, fortunately, 3.7, as hard as that is, it's not 20. And it is definitely not 50. And, I think it puts into perspective, a lot of the problems we've had and the solutions that we use to address those problems. And by no means do they scale up to the severity that Oxnard or Ventura is looking at. And so I just want to express my empathy to those people and those teachers. And, it is a really devastating situation. And anyone out in the public listening today that has any questions, if you're a teacher or a union leader, I'm here to support. I'm here to answer questions. I'm here with guidance to help get your staff and colleagues through these hard times. On the other hand, it really makes me appreciate the work that you all did. And as hard of the decisions they were to make at the time, you acted decisively. And in hindsight, I appreciate that. And it's really been with great resolve that we have had a lot of healing in this district as a result. And, nothing's perfect. Things are still coming up, but we're dealing with them. And I think we're beginning to see the resolution of that trust begin to rebuild. And that's really important for us because, ultimately, these aren't just our colleagues, but these are our friends and our neighbors, and in some cases, family. And so it made me feel like a deep sigh of both compassion on one hand, but relief on the other, that we are not having to do what is happening, on the other side of our borders. And so my heart goes out to those groups and those people. And yeah, that's all I've got. So thank you. By no means are you done, but based upon what I saw at the proposed reductions and, and the second interim budget, things are looking really good. And that makes me very proud. Makes me very proud to be able to stand up in front of all of you and in front of the public after all the fighting and the animosity and the anger and the resentment, to be able to come back up here and say, you know what, things are quiet. Like, we're actually doing okay. I mean, things aren't falling apart. We don't have the state coming in and all those things that were just, I couldn't believe. And so thank you. I'd like to acknowledge all the hard work that my members have been putting in. Report cards have been, for those of you who don't know, I mean, I'm sure all of you know, we completely revamped our report cards at the elementary school level, and it has been a Herculean task to try to figure out how to do this. We are literally rebuilding the ship as we are sailing. And so I just want to acknowledge all the hard work and dedication that our teachers and our administrators at our elementary school sites have done in order to make this a successful process. I was looking at this going, a week and a half ago going, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to have a meltdown. And when I took a moment and breathed and I said, this is what we've been working towards, it wasn't actually that bad. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you as always, President Byrd, and please extend our sincerest gratitude to all of your members who are doing that Herculean effort right now. Now we'll move on to board members' reports. Any trustees who have board members' reports? I always turn to Trustee Smith first.
Sure. I had the opportunity last week to go to a conference on dual enrollment. It was the second session. It involved Ventura Community College District and VCOE, as well as a vendor lead pathway. No, it was Career Ladders project. And they did a very good job describing how they step in, of course, as a vendor, and support the teachers, support the administration on our school site with scheduling, figuring out how to include a college course within the daily schedule at the high school. And it just seems like it's something we should be moving forward with. I know we're working on it, but I think it's the way to go for students to be able to graduate with college credits and or an AA degree when they finish high school. It's really serving students who don't have that path currently. It's really a good thing to do. And then I also went to see the Nordoff production, The Addams Family. It was fabulous. You're going to hear more about that tonight, I'm sure. But I just wanted to say the students just do a wonderful, wonderful job. So I appreciated that.
I'll steal Trustee Reyes' thunder since he's the sports guy. And since I had two daughters who played sports for Nordoff years and years ago, I just want to commend our female sports teams. The water polo team got to the CIF finals, first time in history of this school, and just in time for the new pool to open up and the program to take off even more. They have a young team as far as I can tell. And the girls basketball team got not only to the CIF playoffs. I believe they lost in the semifinals to the team that eventually won the whole thing, but they also got invited to the state tournament. And by the way, the team that the Nordhoff girls lost to in the CIF semifinals is now in the state finals. So congratulations to the female athletes at Nordhoff, and hopefully all of our athletic teams will continue to thrive in the future. And sorry for stealing your thunder.
It's exactly what I was going to talk about. But no, two of us can talk about it because it's just fantastic. Truly, truly unbelievable. I got to catch these games. I know Trustee Brainy was there as well. First with that water polo team. Really, really, really bright future. Of course, it's a young team with some really strong seniors, but some really, really strong freshmen and sophomores. And I also love the fact that they're coached by our alumni as well, two students that I went to high school with. That's really, really beautiful, and that says a lot about this town. And I know they're really excited to get into our new aquatic center. And they already said, you know, Atticus, we got to get our banner up there. I said, well, let's make that happen. Let's make that happen because that was a first in Nordhoff history to get to the CIF finals. And then with the Nordhoff girls basketball team, a little different, much, you know, a lot of seniors that have played together, to my knowledge, for their whole lives. So an alum coach as well in Scott Nash, who I used to play basketball with too. And that was just truly, truly wonderful to watch those games. And they were just so fun to watch, and the electricity in the gym. So thank you to that incredible team for giving us the pleasure to watch them play, and to the community for showing up and showing out. Really, really beautiful. Last, I'll just share, I was able to have a conversation with our new auditors. We now have new auditors, and they wanted to talk to the board president. So I had a very, very good conversation, just reassessing what the timeline is. They're starting to do their initial kind of check-in, and just reaffirming if there's ever anything that we can do to be as transparent as possible, and vice versa. And that was really, really helpful. So just wanted to share that with the public. And yeah, make sure you go see the musical this weekend. I'll be there. Trustee Halverson.
Thank you. Right, yes. Well, I just happened to bring the program from the musical. And if there's anybody in this room who has never been, it's almost worth going just to see the quality of this program. The 10 tribute ads to 10 of the older individuals of the 24, half-page, full-page tribute ads from their parents, showing them as small children when they first had a little tutu on or were singing their first song. The multitude of ads from the community, including one from Chief Peak Builders that said, established in 2020 by Brad Helverson, a proud alumnus of the Nordhoff High School Music Department. A list of all of the patrons of the music department, which there are a number, about 75 people who've given, some well over $1,000 to the department this year. And the great pictures of not only all the cast members, but the production team also, with little bios. It's a terrific program, but it's even a better show. I think we have a resolution 8.2 a little later on for arts education, and we all know about I guess through a lot of us, we know about music, and we know about drama with John Hoy, and we know about dance with Kim and with Gina, but also the arts themselves, the ceramic program.
Elementary creative arts.
There we
as
go.
well as
yes,
secondary.
Thank you. So it goes on and on and on and on. I will tell you, as Trustee Reyes said and Trustee Smith referenced, there are 3 more shows. About 600 people went this past weekend. It can hold 290, and our biggest crowd was 220, so there are still seats available. Robin tells me there are about 350 seats available right now for the last 3 shows in total. And it's 24 students. The tech crew is another 6 or 8 people, and dozens and dozens and dozens of adults who are not affiliated with having kids, and adults who are affiliated with having kids, who make this a tremendous success. And a shout out for the drummer who happens to also be the owner of Chief Peak Builders. But anyway, enough said. It's a fabulous opportunity. People go and they say, I can't believe these are high school kids.
Well, you all stole all of my thunder as well. So I just want to reiterate my congratulations to the girls' teams at Nordoff. It was the most electrifying last few weeks of their season, and just really thankful to the coaches, to all the families that support the teams, that drive, that show up at all of the away games that we can't all get to. So just thank you and congratulations.
I'll continue that point is also, really want to extend our thanks to Trustee Brainy as well as all the district. Now, as you have seen, the agenda looks a little different. The school district is using a different software now that allows the agenda to be translated right away, immediately, to my math, in over 200 languages. So really, really just want to extend my deepest appreciation to the district and to Trustee Brainy for really seeking language justice. It's really, really important, really, really important right now. Okay, now we'll go on to Superintendent Dr. Knox, your report.
Well, thank you for that. It definitely was not easy to change to the new program. Kevin was used to it from his previous district, but Amanda and I had a little bit of stress last week getting the agenda out. But as the months go on, we will get better and better at it. The focus for my report tonight echoes a little bit about what Richard Byrd was speaking about. The March meeting is always a hard meeting because we do bring recommendations for reductions to the board. And while I am very grateful that the list is shorter than it has been in lots of years, for the last, as you guys know, we've been in declining enrollment for 25 years. We have had very long lists over the decades. And so I am grateful that we have done the work to more appropriately right-size our district so that we are bringing less reductions. However, it's hard. It's painful. We know this. We try to treat every single employee with kindness and care. I have mentioned this the last couple of years. I, as a Nordoff high school teacher 20-some years ago, I was the recipient of these notifications of my 5 years. So, we know what that feels like when we're at this level, and so we really treat it with care and caution when we talk to our employees. So every single employee being affected by the decisions tonight has been personally spoken to by one of us in leadership. They've been explained the whys and the hows, and they have had an opportunity to ask questions. The good news is, when we make these decisions in March, they are a conservative look at the future enrollment. And the recommendations for reductions are out of an abundance of caution as we look at the enrollment projections for next year. But as we know, every year throughout the spring, the enrollment changes, and that's good news. So what typically happens is as the enrollment and registration comes in, we are oftentimes able to rescind some of these as we for sure know the numbers for next school year. So we monitored that very closely, and we work very hard to try to bring positions back. We also try to think creatively where we could add a position or combine a position, knowing that each human being affected by these reductions, that matters to them. For us, the most important thing is that everybody lands on their feet. So in previous years, when we have not been able to offer them jobs back in our district, we've been looking at other districts and letting them know when there's openings in other places, because the most important part is that these are human beings with lives and families and bills to pay. And so we take great care and caution as we move forward. But, again, we're very grateful that our list is short, especially in light of our colleagues around the county. And so we feel for them, and we know how hard a night like tonight is, no matter the size of the list. The list matters to people, and so we are as cautious and as careful as we can as we do cuts. So thank you.
A question for you, Dr. Knox, especially for those people who may not stay up another few hours until we get to agenda items 9.2 or 3 or wherever we have some of these things on. But perhaps you could explain that we're actually only contemplating some partial reductions, not full-time layoffs here. And some of those partial reductions involve people who are already more than full-time already employees, if I'm not mistaken.
Sure, yeah. So there are no classified members on the list for reductions. And in fact, for our colleagues across other counties, we have had regular openings in certain positions, including bus drivers and instructional aides and registered behavior technicians. So we encourage people to look at our openings. We do have mostly partial reductions. So a section here or a section there. If you're not familiar with the term section, it's a period in a high school or secondary setting, junior high setting. So, and we had some employees who were more than full-time. They were a 1.2 FTE. So some of these reductions on this list are only going to reduce people back to a regular full-time position. So yeah, so there is even better news than what it looks like on here. Yeah.
In addition, if I'm not mistaken, you're also recommending some administrative cut or cuts, keeping in line with the idea that when we're forced to make cuts, we make them at all levels appropriately. So I think the public ought to know if that's the case.
Correct. So are you referring to the sort of teacher to administrator ratio and keeping that?
Yes.
Yeah. So we do have, we're constantly monitoring how many administrators we have to our teaching staff. We do know that in the past, our ratio was out of line, meaning we had more administrators per number of teachers. It's about 1 administrator to 12.5 teachers. So as we consider reductions for teaching staff, we monitor that and ensure reductions for administrative staff as well.
And also for those people who may not be staying up late tonight, my understanding is, and Mr. Byrd referenced it, the Oxnard High School District's gonna be laying off about 100 people. That's people, 100 people. I saw today Santa Barbara is going to be laying off 85, I think was their number. Ventura is over 100. Those are larger districts than we are, but proportion-wise, their layoffs are astronomically more significant than our notices are. Again, just for people's information out there in the community to know that without patting ourselves too much on the back, we at current time seem to have a pretty good handle on having our district right-sized and operating properly.
Yeah, and on a final note to that point, you know, these reductions are being recommended because of the to match the declining enrollment, right? So we are actually right-sized this year for this group of kids, but as we've reported out repeatedly, we have senior classes of students that have more students in them. So let's say 160, and we only estimate 110 to 115 incoming kindergartners. So that's what we're planning for. We're trying to match that estimated reduction as we look at reducing classes and positions. So.
Thank you all. And thank you, thank you, Dr. Knox, for all of that clarification. Now we'll go on to agenda item 6. This is the adoption of consent calendar. There's a lot of great stuff in here, especially I appreciate the ratification of the various MOUs with a lot of our local organizations. I think that's really, really wonderful. So before we entertain a motion, first, are there any questions, comments, concerns from trustees about the consent calendar?
The only comments I have is I want to publicly thank Jim Churchill and his group at Churchill Orchards, and I want to thank the crew for their willingness not only to work with us, but to enter into a formal MOU so that we have a continuing relationship with them. And that's other groups have been doing that for the last few months that we've come across in approving those. And it's, in my opinion, a good way to go because we have some clarity and some stability in our ongoing relationships with programs that we need to augment our educational programs. So a shout out to them.
I just had one point of clarification on 6.2, and this is for Mr. Olson. We show that we have after this recent expenditures, we're down to down sounds crazy, but $7.8 million in Measure K fund, plus, and then looking at the encumbrances, it looks like it leaves us with about 5 million after the encumbrances, which my simple question is the projected 3 to 4 million of the stadium costs still to come already included it will take us to 5 million, or will that take us to about 1 to 2 million left?
Point of clarification, since you're talking about this too, I wasn't going to bring it up, but it does still remain 7 million in the negative after all the encumbrances are there.
Well,
but I had the same question.
But then you add the 13 million bond, which we're going to talk about later,
right,
which brings it up to about it brings it up to 5.17.
Yeah, you could look at it.
But then my question was, does that 5.17 not include what we have to spend, the 3 to 4 million for the stadium? I didn't see it in there. I saw the 16 million still for the pool.
I saw the demolition there. I saw the architects there, but I didn't see the stadium structure there.
The stadium structure is not encumbered here because we do not have it under contract.
So anticipated that will be, since the whole thing was going to be around 4 and maybe we've spent 1, so another 3.5 million of this 5 million will go toward that, correct?
Yes, sir. Correct.
So that will leave us with about 1.5 million-ish.
Yes, sir. Before any other tax rebates and funds that we have for facilities.
Other
yes.
non-Measure K funds.
Yes, sir.
Good. Thank you for calling me sir. That's really new, I think. Okay.
That's right, because we're also hoping to get that rebate from the microgrid, correct? So, okay. Any further questions, comments? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve tonight's consent calendar?
So moved.
So moved by Trustee Halverson. I'll second. Second by Trustee Reyes. All those in favor?
Yes.
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 That passes 5-0. Now we'll go on to what everyone came here for. Agenda item 7.1, approval and certification of the second period interim financial report for the period ending January 31st, 2025. I believe we have a staff presentation. I always look to Mr. Olson.
All right. Thank you. Yes, tonight we have the 24-25 second interim budget. I will be co-presenting with our Executive Director of Fiscal Services, Mr. Ryan Worsham, and he has a PowerPoint to take us through. Let's see if we can get that loaded up for our folks following us online. I'm sure there are many who want to see this presentation. We'll get this loaded up. Oop. Okay. And all right, so as we've reviewed before, go ahead and give it one click there. Oh, we're going backwards. Let's go for, okay, there we go. So as we've talked, every major budget interim cycle, we're going to take a look at this, remind everybody where we're at, remind everybody that, you know, we're always thinking about 3 different fiscal years every time we're sitting here. So we're always thinking about what happened last year in black, what's happening current year in green, and what's going to happen in the future year. Keeping an eye on that there in blue. So again, as we stand here tonight, we're kind of in the 7-8 o'clock hour of our clock there in March, looking at our 24-25 second interim budget. And you know, next, while we won't have a formal presentation, but the next thing that we'll all be keeping our eye on will be in May, the governor's revise. Back in June, we already had his initial budget report, which we'll kind of at the end talk about our look forward and what we might keep an eye on about that. And then after May, we'll be here talking to you. The next budget that we'll be looking at will be next year's adopted budget. So we'll make a full cycle there around the clock. All right, and our next item, we're going to jump then right into the numbers, our second interim budget, and I'm going to let Ryan bring you through all the numbers of the budget that he has largely created tonight.
Hello. All right, so this slide is an overview of our general fund revenue. I'll be mostly going over what's in the yellow columns, which is the updated numbers from our first interim to our second interim. Our LCFF revenue is up about $62,000 from our first interim. It's largely attributed to a little bit slightly better ADA. And you'll notice that our contribution to our restricted programs are projected to go down, which you can see it's mirrored on both sides by about $300,000-ish, which increases our net unrestricted revenue by about $360,000. The offset to our restricted revenue is a little bit marginal in terms of like more revenue, but the biggest change is the decrease in contribution that we have to make from our unrestricted general fund. This next slide is
We're behind. There was our contribution. There's our 360 difference. And yep, each one's a click. And
there we go. All right. This slide is just something you've seen before. This is just a pie chart of how our revenue breaks out. 96% of our revenue is still state and local, with 4% being what we get from our federal funds. So with all the uncertainty up in the air, it's still a nice reminder that our federal funds do not make up a huge portion of all the revenue that we get every single year.
I'd like to pause there. I'd like to go into that a little bit more, please. Just given that, you know, what a very large percentage of those unfortunate workers were given layoff notices this week at the Department of Education federally. Is it your, those of you who know, because I don't, is it your understanding that it's the intention of the federal government to shift the responsibility to the states? And if they do, where does this 1.25 million next year come from? Are they going to fund the state, or does the state have to, and I'd look at also Trustee Reyes here, is the state going to come up with that extra 1.2? Because so much of that goes to special education. Is it, just explain more for the benefit of everybody, because people ask me this, I said, it's a small percentage, but it's a very important percentage.
It is, as far as who it's targeting, right, and what we use the money for. I would say, you know, it's hard to predict the outcomes of closing where the federal government is trying to go with their Department of Education. You know, I could only personally interject that most of our funding comes from bills passed by Congress that I would imagine should have protection. And, you know, if they if they choose to try not to fund, I'm sure the states will intervene. We have dealt with, you know, in the past, it's very common for federal funds to be given to a state and then the state pass it through to us. A lot of our COVID funds were administered in that way. They're given to the state with certain requirements. The state then comes with their own formula and way of sending out the money to, you know, school districts and other local agencies. Perhaps they try to go in that direction. Right now, it's mostly just guessing. And again, you can see it's about, for us, the federal side is about 1.2 million. You know, it will be interesting to see, I think, how the money flows through and who it comes from. And
yeah, I'll share. I'm not staff for the district, so I want to be really careful here. But just because of my role in my 9 to 5, I get to see a little bit more about this and what I'm seeing. So number one, just like Mr. Olson said, January, the governor released a proposal which did project a very small surplus of around $360 million. We'll wait for the May revise. A lot of folks in Sacramento are absolutely expecting that to flip to a deficit somewhere in $8 to $10 billion, but we still don't really know, because we'll have to see what the taxes come in April. Also, you just had wildfires in Southern California where there is a tax delay. Usually happens when you have natural disasters. You tell the residents there you can wait to file your taxes, and Los Angeles is a really big tax revenue base. So everyone in Sacramento, I believe, is expecting the May revise to be very different in regards to what the governor's January proposal was. And then what does that mean for Prop 98? and all the funding through LCFF. In regards to the federal government and their responsibilities, yes, we see here about 4% of our budget comes from that. A good reminder that the IDEA, individual, I should know that, individuals with disabilities, student education. I know, I should know that. I apologize. But the IDEA, which funds a lot of our special education, a lot of our IEPs, by statute, to my knowledge, is supposed to fund around 40% of state special education. You talk to any SELPA, which is our special education learning partners, in any county, they will say the federal government has not funded that mandate in a very long time, and usually California gets around 9%. So as we've seen in our district, subsidizing special education through our general fund budget. So me personally, I'm very concerned that a federal government that tries to really, really limit a Department of Education does not necessarily mean, oh, that money will just pass through to the states now. Especially, and this is once again just my personal concern, when we see a very tense, might be a very nice way of putting it, relationship between the federal government and the state of California. What does that mean for our future funding as well? I'm not very optimistic for that with that relationship right now. So very concerning, very, very concerning right now. And I will stop there.
Right. This next slide you've seen before. This is an overview of our general fund expenditures. Again, we're going to stick to the yellow column. Our unrestricted salaries are coming in a little bit lower than we had projected at first interim, to the tune of about $350,000. Portion of this is because we were able to shift some of these salaries into some of our restricted resources, as well as we have some vacancies that haven't been filled to this point in the year. The rest of our general fund unrestricted expenditures net to about $20,000 reduction from what we had projected at first interim, bringing us to a complete $370,000 reduction from first interim to second interim. Did I go far ahead?
You're ahead.
Oh, yeah. All right, it just popped on. I expected it to take longer. Okay, so our restricted salaries are also coming in lower than we had projected at first interim. They're down about $95,000 from what we had projected, which is what leads to the the reduction in contribution that we need to make from our general fund into our restricted accounts. This next slide is the pie chart that everybody's used to for all of our expenditures. Again, 78% of our total expenditures come from our people and staff, which is common when, most of what you spend your money on is people. This slide is for our fund balance, and we're going to be looking at the difference column, which is between first interim and second interim. Let's see. Okay. Our ending fund balance is actually projected to increase $730,000 from our first interim, which gives us an increase of $629,000 to our unrestricted or undesignated ending fund balance. In our restricted side, it's marginal. Most of the numbers haven't changed much, so it's only a small difference between what we had projected at first interim and second interim. These are the assumptions that went into second interim. We take these from the dartboard that is put out by school services. It's kind of the gold standard for what everybody uses when they're projecting their assumptions for all of their budgets. It's updated by school services based on all of the most relevant new information. It has the changes in COLA, the changes in PERS and STIRS, and this is what you use as the foundation for your budget.
Mr. Worship, I have a question on this one. I'm sorry. Can you go back? Is it possible to go back? Yeah, there you go. Very bottom. So I think those of us in private business anticipate any particular year, 8% to sometimes 15 to 20% cost, healthcare benefits cost increase one year over the other. Is it 3% every year because you have such a large pool that whoever your insurance, provides your healthcare benefits can keep that increase way below what's happening in the private market?
No. The 3% was what we had projected before we got our new numbers. We actually got them on Monday. When I did the math on it earlier today, it's going to be about a 7.6% increase for our health insurance costs between this year and next year. And that is just the 1 year change. But since we already had our budget done with these assumptions, we couldn't change them after the fact. But just know for adopted budget and moving forward, the health and welfare cost is going to be about 7.5% higher minimum going into the next year.
And will you adjust when you do the 25-26 budget? Will you adjust the 3% for 26-27 up to 7% based on historical data, or will you go back to 3%?
We'll include the new numbers, but then we'll look at what our historical has been. Our health insurance rep is pretty knowledgeable, so he can kind of give us some guidance on what we expect it to be. For the last couple of years, it hasn't been that drastic of a change, which is why we kind of projected out the 3%.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Halverson, to kind of elaborate a little bit, we are in a very large pool with many, many other school districts in California called CISC. And as Mr. Worsham mentioned, for the last number of years, they have managed to keep that increase down very reasonable for us. So this is kind of the first year in a while where CISC has taken a moderate increase.
All right. Last slide is the overview of our multi-year projection. We have first interim, second interim, and then our 2 out years that we're projecting. At first interim, we were projecting that our deficit spending would be about $750,000, leaving us with an undesignated fund balance of $5.9 million. As we move into second interim, the number has changed to we're projecting about a $26,000 deficit that we're spending this year. Is it not going? No, it's just slow.
There you go. Just look at it. There you go.
Yeah, okay, there we go. We're projecting this year's ending fund balance for our undesignated to be about $6.4 million. As we move into 25-26, we are still projecting to have a surplus from what we had originally projected at first interim. But what's important to note is, as you see in the bottom in the red, we are still projecting these cuts in the out years. So without the future reductions, we will go back into deficit spending. And I do honestly expect this to change with the new health and welfare numbers that we're getting now. But since this was already done, there's not a whole lot we could do before it was done.
Mr. Worsham, could you elaborate a little bit more? You're projecting cuts, because if I recall, and right, so I recall at first interim that, or maybe it was the 24-25 approved budget in the summer, that we actually projected deficit balances in the out years. And we're very, well, I realize this all changes, but are you saying that you've built in, and if so, since we have relatively small cuts this year, are you building in projected relatively small cuts in the next 2 years also, and we still end up with a positive, with the fund balance going up?
I'll take the cuts portion. So, we have projected out enrollment for future years.
Yeah.
So we're, again, like I mentioned tonight, we're assuming that we're going to make reductions based on less students. Hopefully we get more students, but we have to project out as if we might have less students. So that's where those cuts come from. There's other factors that have changed. Our UPP is different. We had a higher percentage this year, so now we're projecting out higher percentage of UPP. Our ADA was better. So all those factors go into changes, correct me if I'm wrong here, Mr. Worsham and Mr. Olson, that have then changed what you saw previously. There might have been some deficit spending. We're looking a little bit better as far as not seeing the deficit spending. Also keep in mind we're going into negotiations, so more things to be considered as we look toward those out years.
Thank you.
All right, and as we mentioned earlier, looking forward, the things that we're continually working on. We mentioned that we have a new audit firm. We're currently in the middle of what we call interim auditing. So they're getting their their feet planted with us. They're getting all their data, talking to our board, talking to administration. And so they're here with us right now. So we're working with the new audit firm. We're very excited about that. We are also looking forward to the May revise, so we'll keep an eye on that. Getting a little, again, preview tonight that we're thinking maybe it won't be quite as rosy as the January, the governor's January budget. Again, we're going to keep an eye on that. Those revenue collections are a key point. You know, how are we doing according to the budget? How the fire is going to affect things. So we're hoping that the state is, you know, the fires are definitely going to affect us on the downside, but we're hoping the state is, you know, going to be kind of fairly moderate. So, you know, they were projecting some surplus. Maybe the deficit will be reasonable if there is one because of the fires and other things, but not so much that we'd expect, you know, any major reductions or anything. Maybe we just lose some of the. I think we mentioned on here as well. You know, we were really looking forward to some one-time discretionary money, some block grants that would really help us continue to build on the foundation of things that, you know, the great things that we do here in Ojai. But so those are things that we'll keep our eye on in the future. And again, next time we're here, we'll talk about our adopted budget, and it won't look like the projection of next year that you saw here, because we'll have lots more information at that point.
Thank you all, really, for this work, truly. Whenever I look at these interim budgets, I was talking to Trustee Montrose because I was trying to do the math quickly. I think a thing that really helps me focus is the 3% required legal reserve. And a few of us, I think all of us that were here last time, the district really got in trouble because it couldn't meet that 3% legal required minimum. And every year since then, we meet it, and then we've been exceeding it because we've been righting the ship. And I was talking to Trustee Montrose, I was thinking in the first interim, we met that, and I think then exceeded it by around 21%. And if my math is correct here, for the second interim, once again, we meet that 3% reserve, of course, but then I believe we exceed it by around 24%. Is that correct?
Sounds about right without doing the math.
Got it. Okay. I'll let you correct me on it later. But I just, once again, I say that because I just really want to thank you all for the work you're doing. We came really close to losing our public education here in Ojai. And in 2 years, you all have really, really, really helped us, along with everyone in our district, to really change that. And it came, as President Byrd said, with a lot of cost and a lot of pain. But as we see our neighbors around the county, they're going through that right now. And I'll just share this. When I got in this role, when I think the three of us originally got in this role, I was running around the county trying to understand what was going on and trying to talk to people I need to learn really quickly about what's going on. And I'll always appreciate, I'll keep their name discreet, of course, but a countywide education person said, you know, Atticus, frankly, you all are just going through it first. And we have other school districts in the county that will be having to deal with this in the next year and the year after. And it's hard. It's really hard to see our colleagues have to go through that. And it just reminds us of what we went through. But to see the changes in our budget, just really, really appreciate that work because it helps us maintain public education in this valley for our families. So thank you.
Trustee Reyes, can I just make one
Absolutely
slight correction to what you said? We weren't going to lose public education. We were going to lose local control of public education. It would have gone to the state, would have assumed control. So we still would have had public schools. We just wouldn't have had a local board, and we would have had no control over it.
And
I might argue that, to me, that is a loss of public education. The public and the community isn't governing the board. But yes, I appreciate that. Yes. 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 Yes.
And so we do have a budget for you to consider approving with a positive certification.
Okay. So that was the presentation first. Any questions? We did go through questions. Any comments from the board on this? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve tonight's second interim budget as positive?
Motion to approve the second interim budget and to certify it as positive and pass it along to those who need it passed along as a positive certification.
So moved by trustee Montrose. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by trustee Brainy. All those in favor, say yes.
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 Yes, thank you. That passes 5-0. Thank you for that work. And thank you for the clarification, trustee Alverson. You're spot on. Now we'll go on to agenda item 7.2. This is our bond sales and facilities funding options. This is a discussion and an action item. I believe we have our partners from the JPA here as well. Thank you for being here with us again today. Mr. Olson, I'll turn it to you again.
Of course, thank you. So to build on the discussion that we had last month about selling our final tranche of Measure K bonds, or I should say accessing cash to fund our facilities, we have Mr. Weaver here, again from GFS JPA, to help us lead us in a discussion and to help answer any questions. And this is just the PDF attached. This is just the PDF attached to the item. I don't think there's a, I don't think we're doing a PowerPoint. It's just the PDF attached. You can just run through it. So as we're getting that queued up for Mr. Weaver to kind of talk us through a little bit, I'll just remind us all, Measure K was a $45 million bond. We have $13 million to sell. As we noted earlier today, we have some construction encumbrances already that need to utilize these funds. We need the cash to finish paying for them. We have other construction projects with DSA that I know the board and the community really would like us to continue marching along and get constructed. Particularly, I'm thinking about the bleachers at Nordhoff Stadium. And so, to pay for these, we need to access cash essentially. And there are a couple ways we can do that. We discussed it a little bit the last meeting, and we're just going to build on that a little bit today. And I'll let Mr. Weaver take it on from there.
Great, very good. Thank you. Thanks for having me back here tonight. Very nice to be here. And so I just have some really brief supplemental information to share with you to sort of continue our discussion about Measure K that we had last time. If we could go to, yeah, perfect. So just by way of review, I just wanted to sort of recap the 4 options that we discussed last time for your consideration. Option number 1, we have $13 million of remaining authorization under Measure K, and we could proceed with issuing that remainder. The nice thing about this option is it gives us the most amount of money for our facilities projects, the soonest. The downside to this option is that we estimate the tax levy could be in the low to mid $30 range, which is a bit higher than the estimate of $27. A second option is we could do less. We estimate about $6 to $7 million could be issued, and we could stay within that $27 tax levy estimate. A third option is we could wait longer. We could delay issuing bonds until 2028, which was the original timeline. And then a fourth option is that we could increase risk, and that would be a route where we undertake bridge financing to pay for our facilities projects now, and then we pay that bridge financing back in 2028 with the issuance of more Measure K bonds. Correct, in 2028. So if we flip to the next slide, just wanted to share some cost considerations about bridge financing. So here's 3 scenarios laid out here. Under all 3 options, we issue the $13 million of remaining Measure K. The option to the left is we undertake bridge financing now to be repaid back in 2028 by that $13 million of Measure K. You can see we estimate the net funds to go to our facilities program of about $10.3 million. The remainder is going to go toward the expenses associated with the bridge financing, which are upfront costs and interest costs. The middle option is we do a combination. We do about $7 million of Measure K bonds now, and we also do $5 million of bridge financing now, so a little bit smaller bridge financing, pay that bridge financing back in 2028. You can see that gets us a little bit more facilities funds of about $11.2 million. And then on the right is we proceed with a full $13 million of Measure K now, and that gets us about $12.6 million of funds for facilities.
If we issue the bonds in 2028, then that's more years people are paying on their taxes for it as opposed to issuing them now.
That's correct.
So on the one hand, there might be an increase in the levy amount now. On the other hand, there'll be a longer period of time that people are still paying for it on their taxes.
That's correct.
And we get less money to use for the projects.
That's correct. We estimated about 5 years.
And we already have 7 million encumbered and another 3 million we need for the stadium and a couple of other projects we need to get finished as well. So even if we just did the 7 million you're suggesting in the middle scenario there, bridge financing for the rest, we just barely pay for our encumbrances now, but then we're paying additional costs to do the stadium and the other stuff we need to do. Just want to make sure I understand.
Very good. And then if we go to the next slide, just sharing some risk considerations. So waiting until 2028, for transparency here, there are 2 risk factors. One is interest rates. We don't know if interest rates will be high or low in 2028. The second is assessed valuation, which is our tax base and our property taxes that go toward repaying these bonds. We don't know if growth will be strong or soft from now until 2028. So those are some risk factors to be aware of. We do think the likely scenario is that if we issue bonds in 2028, there will likely be reduced tax levies compared to issuing now. Obviously, no guarantees on that because of these risks. But I do want to point out, we do estimate that even waiting until 2028 doesn't solve everything. We do expect, based on our modeling, there will be a little bit higher tax levy than $27 for at least a few years. And it's probably going to be somewhere around $29 and then have a bit of a glide path down to 28 and then to 27 over a few year period.
Let me put it in perspective, if I can, for a second. If the estimates I saw in going through all the numbers were averaging out maybe at $32 per 100,000 over the lifetime of it versus the 27 that had been originally anticipated. So if your appraised value is 500,000, and again, appraised value has nothing to do with what a property might sell for on the open market. It's what the county appraiser appraises it for. You're looking at a difference perhaps of about $25 a year. If your appraised value is $800,000, you're looking at a difference of about $40 a year. Okay.
That's true with residential, but that does not address, we have not addressed our commercial landowners
Right.
that contribute.
And they'll pay more because their properties are appraised at higher values. Right. The increase number will go up the same. It'll go up maybe $5 per 100,000, but they're appraised at more than the appraised value of the residential properties are. Clearly understood.
So hopefully that's some helpful supplementary information. I think the goal for tonight is to get some feedback on the 4 options and sort of get a sense of how you might like to proceed.
You know, I'll just step in real quick. You know, the next steps would be that in April, we need to bring a resolution to the board to authorize administration to proceed with whichever financing option the board feels is best. So tonight, we'd really like to
make that decision,
take action, give us guidance, you know, really have a unified front, you know, together that gives us clear like, we do not want to get to April and have a resolution the board is not in agreement with.
And you've already told us we run out of money in May.
We run out of money in May. So sorry, we do not want to get to April, our resolution next month, and the board feel like, you know, hey, administration has brought a financing option that you are not in agreement with. So tonight we want to make sure that we're together.
Question, and then I'll go to you, Trustee Hobson. Just question on that point. So whichever guidance action that the board takes tonight, April, a resolution comes, board hopefully approves that resolution, that meeting, then sale, you know, money comes in next week. What is the timing on that? Just curious.
I can address that.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Weaver.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we have the board take action at that April board meeting, about a month later, we would have our sale process. We're currently recommending a competitive bid process. At that point, we lock in interest rates, and we'd have a winning firm, bank or underwriting firm, to provide us the money. And then we expect by the end of May, we will have closed, and the funds will then be available for the district to proceed with the Measure K projects.
First, I just want to clarify, there is no action item tonight. We're providing guidance.
Correct.
Right.
It is up to the board.
Is it, oh, was it actually on the agenda as a
Yeah.
possible action item?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, okay, I'll go from that. So first of all, I'm very much in favor of selling the $13 million bonds in total in May. I appreciate that it has an impact on people who live in our tax district. The least impact would be on individuals who have lived in this area a long time, stayed in their own house a long time, and these are a lot of people who would be on basically restricted incomes where they're no longer working, but the assessed value of their properties now might be in the range of $300,000 to $400,000 because they bought their homes for $150,000 or $100,000 30 years ago. So for private homeowners over the age of 65 who are now retired, if we say they have an average assessed value of $400,000 or $500,000, it would be in the neighborhood, if it was 32 instead of 27, it would be about $20 per year. Middle would be people such as I who have bought a house 12 years ago, third house, $600,000 then in a medium income area, Golden West. It's now appraised at about $750,000. It would cost me in the neighborhood, as Trustee Monsher said, about $40 a year. Highest impact would be on those people who have come in recently and purchased homes for $2-3 million. I may be stepping a little out of line, but I would say that they probably would be least impacted by a 100, let's see, 10 times 5, by 60, 70, 80, 90, $100 extra assessment a year. I want to tell you what's on the line here, and I think I gave you the number. I think we have $1.5 million left after we pay for the stadium. If we go for option 2, which is 1.8 million below 13 million, we can't afford the stadium unless we get all these other special things that come in, which we anticipate we'll get, but we don't immediately have the money to necessarily give it to the stadium in September when we need to get that stadium up, so at least it's open for soccer season in December. If we go with the first option where we fall way short, even if we go with the option to sell 13, we only get 12.5, so we'll only have about $1 million surplus at that point to complete other projects that we hope we'll be able to complete. So I really feel that, and I'll speak optimistically, that most individuals in this valley who are paying attention to this would be accepting of paying $20 to $30 to $40 extra a year to help put a state-of-the-art stadium at our high school where we can feature our athletic program and other activities that happen there.
Thank you.
Which I would also just add, a really strong public school district also increases your property values. And so the more that we can uplift our school district, continue to uplift our school district, that does have a direct correlation to property values in our town. And I couldn't say it better than you did, Trustee Alverson. I really, frankly, couldn't say it better than you. Completely agree. And I think I'm even concerned that the money that we're hoping to get back from some of these environmental programs, I'm not 100% positive that it'll be there. This microgrid project that I'm really excited that we're supposed to get that rebate with everything up in the air with the federal government and their statements with climate change and progress in that field. I'm concerned with that. So all that to say is I think it's even more important. I think it's really important to go that route that you're suggesting, Trustee Alverson. Other trustees. Trustee Smith.
Yeah, I do have a couple questions about the presentation. Sorry, I have all these documents in front of me. So on your slide, page 2, we may still be on that. The second The second option of, no, under the first option, issue full 13 million. The second sentence, the estimated tax levy could be in the low, mid $30 range for at least a few years, depending on the AV growth, which actually has been about 160% in the last 20 years. So I'm not terribly worried about that. But if I look at last month's presentation, on page 14, when you gave an estimate of 3.5 AV growth, which was pretty conservative, it's not just a few years that number reaches the $30 range. It's the entire period to 2053. So I found that sentence a little
Yeah, if I could maybe
yeah,
explain.
please.
One of the other slides that we had shared last time, which was shown on page 12, that was modeled at a slightly higher 4.5%. Yeah, and under that scenario, it was maybe half a dozen years or so in which the tax rate exceeded that $27. And then for the remainder of the term, it was at or below that $27 estimate.
So that's the one you're referring to, not the 3.5. Okay.
So first, any further questions for Mr. Weaver or for
Yeah,
Mr. Olson on this? Yes, Trustee Smith.
On the bottom option D, if you will, the increased risk at the bridge financing. What risk are we talking about?
Yeah, thank you. So it's really those two risks that I stated earlier. One is interest rate risk, and the other is assessed valuation risk. If we proceed now, we have less risk because there's less time for those factors to change. If we wait until 2028, there's a potential for more volatility in interest rates and assessed valuation. That's the risk I was referring to.
Okay, even though 2028 was the original last date of the last sale of the bond.
That's correct. It was the original date.
If I could, it's because if we sell the bonds now, we lock in all of the interest rates and everything, so that becomes a known quantity for us at that point. At that point, the only variable for what the tax levy becomes in the future for every single year is the assessed growth. So if the assessed value growth, exceeds 4% or is 4.5%, as that model showed, actually, the district will level out that assessed, that levy will land at 27 and below for many of the years, right, in the future. We have our first years where we're going to exceed, and in all honesty, we were going to exceed, and we did exceed the 27 already based on prior sales that the community may not have been aware of, the board might not have been aware of. This is why we're having these conversations, because we want to bring transparency to the board, to the public, to talk about more nuance of the financing of these decisions, because they do have long-term implications for everybody. And, again, it might put some people to sleep, but we can say that we all had a, robust conversation about, what we're doing here.
Which chart is that? Because I don't see that.
It is the 4.5% Measure K tax levy. So from last month, it is page 12. We have the 2025 tax levy would be estimated to be about $33.20. We would jump to about $37 and then start to move down and level out 33, 31, 30, 30, 29, 28, and so on, landing through 27s and then 26s all the way until it's paid off.
Okay, so when you say it was over in 2024, how much was it? 27 and 60 cents?
60 cents.
So
yes.
That's what the public may not be aware of, 60 cents.
Correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, I know we've kind of jumped a little bit to comments and stuff, but any comments from the trustees? I know Trustee Halverson said his piece. I definitely agreed with it. Trustee Brain, anything you'd like to share?
I want to thank you for the presentation. It's very clear to me, and good job.
Thank you.
Thank you also to the board members who have explained it to me and gave such good color on their decision-making process, because I wholeheartedly agree with that thinking, and I think it's the most prudent decision to make. I think it's the most fiscally conservative decision to make, and I think it's the most community-minded decision to make. So thank you.
Okay. Seeing Trustee Smith, would
I
you
may be the only
go ahead?
dissenting person.
It's okay. That's why we're all here.
That's
We're
why
all
we're
different
here.
people.
And that's why the resolution is not here tonight, so we can make suggestions. It may be community-minded, however, it is not what we promised the community. And to this point, I haven't seen any community input. So my suggestion would be, I mean, this has been a very internal struggle for me, because I want to be responsible with the decisions that we have to make in the best interest of our district. However, it is a lack of integrity, from my view, for us to go over 27, because that's what we promised to voters. And I know that in 2 years or 4 years, we'll go back to voters again. And I don't want anyone to question our integrity on what we're bringing to them and what we expect it to be. I think that in this next month, it would behoove us to reach out to our community, survey, whatever it takes, to get input from them to see, gosh, we don't mind at all if it's $5 per 100,000. Maybe that's what the result will be, but I don't think that we should, I'm not comfortable, personally not comfortable, making that decision without input from our commercial, our residential, our taxpayers.
Thank you, Trustee Smith. And as always, we're not all the same. So that's exactly why the 5 of us are here, elected by the community, to do this work. So really appreciate that insight. Trustee Officer, Trustee Moncharch.
I've just got and
Trustee
perhaps Mr. Ol's going to open. Back when Measure K was approved by the voters, do you have access to the actual written statement? Because my understanding was we didn't promise we would go over. We said we would attempt to stay.
I'll find it. I have it.
Yeah, good, because it's not, it was, as I recall, we had that discussion a month ago and said we would endeavor, or some word was used, it wasn't, that it couldn't go over $27 assessed value.
Yeah, and one of our slides last time had the actual ballot question included, and
Here it
I
is.
Read.
Yeah, I'd just like to hear it, or you've got it also, yeah. Somebody could read it.
I can read that statement. So $45 million of bonds at legal interest rates, generating on average $2.3 million annually, while bonds are outstanding, with levies of approximately 2.7 cents per $100 of assessed value.
An approximation.
It's an approximation.
To me, it was an approximation. What year is this? 2020? We are a totally different world than we were in 2020. I mean, it's a totally different landscape. And I think our community is aware, and we're trying to move forward and be kind of make decisions that are super thoughtful, thinking about all of those aspects. And I feel like our community would understand us making this decision, knowing it was an approximate. I mean, we would never know what the future, which is kind of one of the reasons we have to kind of make this decision now, because we don't know what 5 years from now looks like. It could be a totally different view. The interest rates could be insane, and we get at $6 million of our 13 that we're not even getting the full 13 now. So those are the things I'm considering.
I would like to address Trustee Smith. You felt that in a way you were part and parcel of what was going on back then because of your working relationship with the prior administrations. I don't have that relationship. I don't feel any fear about lack of integrity in voting to approve all 13 million, because I see my job as dealing with the current situation as is and trying to do the best I can with the current facts. Just like when the 3 of us had to vote on downsizing schools and laying off staff and consolidating schools and doing other things we had to do. Those were the facts that existed on the ground at the time, and I took a vote to deal with them. I feel perfectly comfortable in my skin doing that now. I understand your concern, but I wasn't part of that, and so I don't have the same concern.
And I do, because I was not only on the committee for yes on Measure K, but it was also yes on Measure J. So I do take those commitments very seriously. And I think that I just would like to note that this middle bridge financing option, that assumes that we receive 7 million plus bridge financing for the other 5, right? I'd like to know if we took a partial sale of 5 to 7 million, and we left the other 5 for the 2028 date, and used other available funds to us, including the 2.29 in developer fees, because all of those developer fee funds go to absolutely, as far as I can tell, every one of the improvements that we've committed to under Measure K. I'm wondering, and so that's why I'm looking forward to getting that kind of information over the next month to know what all of our options truly are. Thoughts on if that's even feasible with the commitments we have. I know that the encumbered funds, as we were talking about earlier, cover the pool, cover some of the stadium, but not all. And when I look at the other big projects that are to come, like the 2 cafeterias, those aren't scheduled to occur this year. I'm not sure how much of those will even happen before 2026. So I just wonder if we looked at those projects in a deeper, more meaningful way, that a partial sale would be doable.
Yeah, I would just say by not accessing the bridge financing to get the rest of the funding, it would put us in a very difficult situation to continue to fund the major projects. But what also administration is dealing with on a daily basis are the minor projects that we're really trying to pinch pennies on and slow down. But unfortunately, what ends up happening is there are things that we can't not do. I'll give you an example. We have some bathrooms at Nordhoff that are very old, and the sewer line is very old, and they back up weekly. We need to run a new sewer line. It's going to be off, maybe $50,000 to run a new sewer line in a different direction this summer to get those bathrooms operational again. Those kind of things continually come up, and it nickels and dimes the fund as well to the tune of 50, 75, 100,000. And we need those backup funds, as we try to complete, as we round out Measure K, and as we hope to complete those kitchens, our stadium. We really need those backup funds because the final set of funds that we're hoping for is this potentially $3 million of rebate, which I've been working on. We had some updates this week. We'll hopefully file some taxes in the next 4 weeks. We have to do a cost segregation study, file taxes in about 4 weeks, and then hopefully the IRS will fund the solar side of that, which we're estimating to be maybe just over 2 million of that total, because the microgrid's not done, so we can't file for that part. So that's 2 million in maybe 12 months. I have no idea what the payment schedule will be from the IRS on that. Without that, because those projects are underway with Schneider Electric, well, the solar's already paid for, but the microgrid's underway, they'll expect a payment. This whole time, our budget on that has kind of pulled those out as if the microgrid was being paid for by the taxes, but in all reality, it's not. It's being reimbursed. So in the short term, we will run out of money until we get that money back from the IRS to then come around and finish their last projects, if that's the path that we choose.
There are a lot of reasons that we're in the position we're in now, and I appreciate them. But I also feel that we owe this decision to our community.
I guess I'll just finish with this. We've had a lot of change in this community these past few years, and frankly, declining enrollment for the past 20 plus years. So it's not like change has just happened. We've been experiencing a change in this town, and it feels a lot similar to the conversation we had around school reconsolidation, even the lights for the tennis court. There are things, policy choices impact everything, and there's never a perfect policy. There's always a trade-off. And I think I can only speak for myself, but my main thrust when I come here is how can we provide the most resources to our students' educational and personal growth. And I understand, I really appreciate the perspective, Trustee Smith, about a future bond and what does this do to that relationship. However, when I look at these figures, what gives us, to Trustee Alverson's point, the most return? Selling the 13 million immediately seems to be the safest bet, especially when we are seeing an economy that is extremely volatile right now. And I'm not an Ivy League economist, but I don't anticipate that to settle down in the next year, 3 years and 10 months. So there are impacts, and I really think the key word that's missing here is approximately $27 per 100,000 assessed value. Approximately. It was also passed in the fall of 2020 in the middle of a global pandemic where the economy was really struggling. So I think I also give credit to our voters and our community members understanding that it was passed in a volatile moment. It wasn't passed in a period of stable economic growth. It was passed in a period of volatility. And I think that word approximately is really, really important. And if we can deliver more for our students and our facilities, then everyone is better for that. Everyone succeeds. And my thrust here, and I apologize to anyone that feels offended by it, but my thrust here is what can help our students the most. That, I believe, is our responsibility. And when we talk about what does the community want, that's why we're here. We're all 5 duly elected members of our community. I'm not interested in vacating that responsibility to someone else or to push our district that is already overworked and understaffed to now go find that answer when I think it's right in front of us. And for these reasons, I feel it is incumbent on us to act in a responsible way. And this feels to me the most responsible way to do that, to ensure our students get what they deserve, not just what's right, but what they deserve, which is a quality education and quality resources that our schools have they've needed for a very long time. So if there are any further comments, I'm ready to move a motion here, but Trustee Montrose, I'll look to you. Look like you want to say something.
I'm going to make a motion.
Go right ahead.
I move that we authorize the sale of the remaining $13 million and that we do so post haste. And that would mean coming back in April with the actual nitty-gritty proposals on how we're going to do it so that we can get it done and accomplished before we run out of money. So the simple thing is I'm going to make a motion that we authorize the sale of the full remaining $13 million.
I second that motion. Any discussion on it? Seeing none, is there a vote? All those in favor, say yes.
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 All those opposed, say no.
Opposed.
Any abstentions? Seeing none, that passes 4-1-0. Thank you. I'm going to call a quick break so I can run to the little trustees room, and then we'll return in a few minutes, okay?
Thank you.
That's a problem. So that's where, it's not like they just got, everything was equal. It looked weird. Right. And that was, yeah, a problem.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Okay, we're back at 7:43 p.m. Thank you all for giving us the break. Okay, we're going to move on to we're going to move on to agenda item 8.1. This is approval of resolution number 24-25-11 in recognition of Women's History Month. It is March, and March is Women Histories Month, so we honor and celebrate the struggles and achievements of American women throughout the history of the United States. As always, I think it'd be really important to read this resolution. I will, of course, defer to Trustee Smith and Trustee Brainy if they'd like to read this resolution. Dr. Knox, would you like to share anything?
No, I will defer to the trustees, Brainy and Smith, if they'd like to read.
Of course. Resolution 24-25-11, recognition of Women's History Month, March 2025. Whereas women of every race, class, and ethnic background have made significant and historic contributions to the growth and strength of our society in countless recorded and unrecorded ways, fighting not only against sexism, but also against many intersecting forms of discrimination, including discrimination based on race, ethnicity, class, disability, sexual orientation, veteran status, and many other categories. And
whereas women have played and continue to play critical roles in the economic, cultural, and social spheres of our nation's life by constituting a significant portion of the labor force working in and outside of the home, as well as providing the majority of the nation's volunteer labor force, and have been particularly important in the establishment of early philanthropic and cultural institutions in the country, and
whereas,
I don't want to be left out here.
okay, let's go for it.
I got raised by
like
a
a man.
mother.
Go
I had
on.
2 sisters. I raised 2 daughters. So I'm going to read.
A feminist king. Go on.
There we are. Whereas women of diverse backgrounds have served as leaders in the forefront of progressive social change, not only to secure their own right of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also to abolish slavery, promote fairness, equality, and safety in the workplace, and advance the modern civil rights movement, which create a more equitable and just society. And
all right, I'm going to jump in here. I'm the son of a single mom with 4 older sisters here. So here we go. Whereas despite these contributions, the role of women in history has been overlooked and undervalued in the past, though its significance is now emerging and assuming its rightful place as an important part of the body of American and world history. And
I would like to jump in, especially as a compliment to the 3 women who are up here with us. Whereas the leadership of women in elected office, including our own school board, Ventura County Office of Education School Board, our representatives serving in the California State Senate and Assembly, as well as our representatives in both houses of Congress, serves as an example of community and civic engagement for girls and women in our district.
Therefore, it is fitting and proper that the Ojai Unified School District Board of Education proclaims the month of March 2025 Women's History Month and encourages all district schools to commemorate this occasion with appropriate instructional activities, adopted this 12th day of March 2025.
fantastic. All those in favor?
yes,
Yes.
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 That passes 5-0. I move to approve. Is there
the
a
resolution
second?
as read.
Move to approve. Second by Trustee
Second.
Brainy. All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. That passes 5-0. We're having a good time here on a Wednesday night. Okay, now we'll go on to approval of resolution number 24-25-12, recognition of Arts Education Month. As always, I'll turn to Trustee Halverson if he'll like to kick
Oh,
this
good.
one
I would
off.
love to do the first paragraph then. Whereas the Ojai Unified School District believes arts education, which includes dance, music, theater, and the visual arts, is an indispensable part of basic education for all students to develop initiative, creative ability, self-expression, self-reflection, critical thinking skills, discipline, and a heightened appreciation of beauty and cross-cultural understanding. And
Whereas the arts and art education are integral parts of the Ojai community, and
Whereas with active support from our PTAs, Ojai Education Foundation, the Ojai Music Festival, parents, and others, the Ojai Unified School District has been able to continue to incorporate the arts in its curriculum during times of cutbacks and state funding for the arts. And
whereas the district recognizes the significant contributions of Proposition 28 funds towards advancing arts education initiatives, enabling the enhancement of arts programs, the acquisition of necessary resources, and the cultivation of a vibrant arts community within our schools. And
now therefore be it resolved that the Ojai Board of Education proclaims March as Arts Education Month and commends all our local volunteers and teachers for their stellar efforts to ensure continuation of arts education in our schools.
Be it further resolved that the Ojai Unified School Board encourages all schools to support this occasion by exploring a special emphasis on the arts this month and supports identifying state funding sources for continued support of arts in our schools adopted this 12th day of March 2025.
I move that we approve this agenda, this resolution, excuse me.
so moved by Trustee Smith. Is there a second by Trustee Montrose? All those in favor?
Yes.
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 Yes. Passes 5-0. Thank you. Now I'll move on to agenda item 8.3, approval of Nordhoff Junior High and High School course name changes and new courses for the year 2025 to 2026. This is an action item. Dr. Knox, anything you'd like to
I don't
add?
think there's any explanation, I can't talk tonight. Any explanation necessary unless you have questions.
Any questions for Dr. Knox? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved by Trustee Brainy. I'll second. Second by Trustee Reyes. All those in favor?
Yes.
That passes 5-0. Thank you. Agenda item 8.4, approval of service agreement for Rock Tree Sky to hold expanded learning opportunities program, also known as ELOP, camps during the months of April and June. This is an action item. Dr. Knox?
I'll say a little here. You might recall that last year we brought in a service provider, Impossible Science, and they ran some science camps. And so this is a wonderful opportunity to bring in Rock Tree Sky, who currently serves our independent studies students, and allow an opportunity for the rest of the students in the school district to experience their wonderful program. So we're excited about this opportunity.
I just have one question around this. When we did approve that last year for it was a bit of we had some kind of information on what the camp would look like, what students might get to do there. This is more of just a service agreement between them. So I was wondering what the curriculum of those camps is focused on and what it might be.
Yeah, the biggest thing with Rock Tree Sky is that they are all about an interest-based program. So we're actually currently recruiting our own staff. They're also recruiting their, they call them mentors. And through that recruitment, we're going to find out what they are all interested and passionate about teaching. So you're going to see a wide array of options: music, art, STEAM, anything and everything that people come with for options. And then it looks different every morning for the students. They come, they know what their menu of options are by grade bands, right? And they work with a mentor to choose their options for the day. So it's very intended to allow the student to use their motivation and their interest for that day to choose what they want to engage in. So
it's only a few weeks away. So we won't see that information before the April, but maybe we could get a recap.
Absolutely.
After, and then know a little better about what summer programming looks like.
Yeah. And if you want to, any of you board members want to visit Summit School right now at the San Antonio campus, you could see what it looks like there. It will be similar as a camp.
I had two questions. I'm unsure because it doesn't say what administrative costs of $7,200 will be, and if we have a idea of what the previous year's administrative costs were.
With Impossible Science, I'd have to go look back at their agreement to see if it was spelled out. But certainly there is a lot of planning that has to happen, including professional development, going through the registration of all the students, planning and organizing the timeline of the camp. So that will be done by administration and secretarial staff of Rock Tree Sky to get the camps ready.
Do we know what costs the previous group charged us for this?
I don't have that in front of me.
No, that my review of that was they just lumped it all together. They said what they were doing and they gave us a bottom line cost.
All right. Okay, thanks. Those were my questions.
I'm sorry, you just jumped right in here, but So when I see the fees total, and I'm not going to attachment A, but I'm not to exceed $100,000, do you, and I know there was a question, Dr. Knox, that you answered, but I wanted to clarify it. Do you know how much we in fact paid the group that did it last year as far as total payment for both of the weeks that they did?
I think for both camps, it was in the $80,000 range. Mr. Olson looked at that, so I'm not sure if that's correct or not. I will tell you, we expect this to come in quite a bit less. And one of the reasons is that when Impossible Science brought their instructors in, they also required that we have instructors at the 20-to-1 ratio that we're required to have. In this case, we will work together with the mentors. We won't need double instructors, if you will, with this particular partnership. So we expect it to be less costly than the Impossible Science Camp.
Thank you for that clarification.
Seeing no further questions, is there a motion to approve? I'll move. So moved by Trustee Reyes. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Halverson. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes, that passes 5-0. Thank you. Now we'll go on to agenda item 9.1, consideration of approval of job description revision. This is for a school counselor. It is an action item. Dr. Knox.
Just really briefly, you all are all aware, based on our negotiation last year with classified staff, that we are actually working through all of the classified positions this year to look at their job descriptions and update them. And there are updates that equally need to be had on the certificated side, although there are not as many different positions, if you will, in the certificated side of the equation. This particular counselor job description hadn't been updated for over 20 years, so it's due. There are definitely changes. And we anticipate that we might be able to post a job for a counselor in the near future, given some of the specialized funding that we've received in grants and such. And in addition, I believe I've mentioned to this group, there is a new funding mechanism by charging insurance when we provide services through counseling that we will be starting next year. And so we're going to be adding staff to work on that. That should pay for itself through the new revenue. And again, we have a grant that should allow for us to be able to pay for, again, this additional counselor that we hope to post in the near future. So we figured we better bring you an updated job description so that we're posting a more current and accurate representation of the work.
Any questions from the trustees? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved by Trustee Brainy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Halverson. Sorry. All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
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 Yes, that passes 5-0. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to go on to agenda item 9.2. This is approval of resolution 24-25-13. This is reduction or elimination of particular kinds of certificated services. Dr. Knox, I'll turn this over to you.
For the next 4 items, I opened with my superintendent's report regarding this. So I feel like I've said what I needed to say, and unless you have any questions, we can move forward with passing the resolutions.
I just have, no, I have no questions.
Is there a motion to approve? I'll move. So moved by Trustee Reyes. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Second by Trustee Brainy. All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
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 Passes 5-0. Thank you. Now we'll go on to agenda item 9.3, resolution 24-25-14. Dr. Knox, I don't think it needs another. Are there any questions before I move? I'll move to approve all of these, just so you know. Trustee Halverson.
I do have a question. I just have to find the question. Here, let me see. Okay, sorry. I apologize. You were on a great roll there, Trustee Reyes. I'm just trying to get this clear in my head. Resolution regarding release of certificated employees working less than 60% of full-time assignment in adult education. Is every employee in adult education, except perhaps the administrator, working less than 60% of full-time assignment?
Yes. These are part-time teachers. The adult education program is not an 8-hour-a-day program. It's usually a couple classes here or there in the evenings. And even the administrator, Alex Mejia Holdsworth, who oversees it, is only partially assigned to that role. It's a very small adult school
And so is this a yearly fact that every year, based on this rule, that we lay all of the adult, well, give them notice that they may be laid off, then you see what registration is, and then
It's a
bring
little
them
different. It
back?
has actually more to do with the funding source in these regards with these hourly employees and less than 60%. It's a layoff notification. And then once we are assured funding is secured for specialized programs, then it is extremely typical to bring everybody who wants to return back.
And we've done this the last 2 years. Yeah. Well, we've only been on the board the last 2 years, so.
Any further questions?
No, just a comment that as we roll through these resolutions so quickly that we understand the seriousness behind them. And I can't speak for everyone, but it's truly my hope, and I know it is others, that many of these can be rescinded in the fall.
That's right, Trustee Smith. Oh, sorry, Trustee Montrash.
Just one other comment. I know in one of the issues we're dealing with, I think it might be 9.5, but there were some comments we received from the principal at Nordhoff. And it's nice to see that you're able to work together with them to assuage some of his concerns and make sure that there's adequate staffing on the administrative side at the junior high school and high school while they're working through the bugs that still exist from our consolidation. So I'm glad you were able to work it out.
And my apologies, I should have said, we'll approve all these and then we'll have comments after, but absolutely. So seeing no questions, I'll move to approve. Resolution, agenda item 9.3, approval of resolution 24-25-14. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Smith. All those in favor?
Yes?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
that passes 5-0. Now we'll go on to agenda item 9.4, resolution 24-25-15 regarding release and non-reelection of temporary certificated employees. It is an action item. First, are there any questions for Dr. Knox? Seeing none, I'll move to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Smith. All those in favor?
Yes?
Yes.
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 That passes 5-0. And then lastly, agenda item 9.5, resolution 24-25-16, resolution regarding the possible release and reassignment of certificated administrators. This also is an action item. First, are there any questions for Dr. Knox? Seeing none, I'll move to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Brainy. All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes, that passes 5-0. And before I move on, I'll just add, absolutely echo Trustee Smith's comments, Trustee Montrash's comments. I imagine everyone on this board's feelings that March and May are frankly the two toughest months to be a board member when we're dealing with livelihoods and careers and people's families. And we definitely want to thank everyone that gives their labor and their service to our district. This, of course, is the pink slipping part. So we are hoping that due to registration, we will be able to hopefully rescind as many of these as possible by May 15th, which is a perfect segue to remind folks, please register your students as early as you can. As early as you can, please register your youngsters. It helps us able to staff and also retain the employees that we will be able to retain, which helps everyone. So thank you all. I will move on to agenda item 10.1, which is discussion and possible approval of a governance team self-evaluation and/or consulting workshop. Dr. Knox, I'll turn this over to you.
Yeah, so you might recall that Trustee Smith and Trustee Brainy, as well as Ms. Belcher and myself, we went to a CSBA conference in December, and we all went to slightly different workshops. So I'm not sure if anybody attended this one with me. If I don't recall, but one of the ones I had gone to had talked about sort of the cycle of things to do as a governance team, which the five of you and I make, and so we haven't renewed our board goals from 23-24. Interestingly, it was suggested that actually spring is a better time to work on those after you get the dashboard data and you have some data to think about, and then before you finalize the LCAP in June. So now might be the right time to actually review the goals and set them for the remainder of this year and into the next school year. The other recommendation, which you'll see the board goals are the next item, because if we want to just move forward and talk about revising them today, right now, or make recommendations for me to bring something back to you, we can. But the other recommendation was also perhaps before working on board goals, we might want to consider an evaluation. And then along with that, sometimes the districts will hire a consultant to come and walk us through, reviewing those and making sure that we're sort of on the same page and in alignment with each other moving forward, so that we can have the best governance team possible. I'll just tell you personally, from my role, I feel that we make a very cohesive governance team and it feels very comfortable. I do think that $300 is a nominal fee to do a survey, which might give us some information and, allow us to use that to provide feedback to ourselves and to our community, and possibly to allow us to use that data to make some different decisions that we might not have considered. So it would be my recommendation that we consider an evaluation tool. However, interested to hear what you all have to say.
I do remember the board doing this with CSBA. Sorry, I can't remember when. I believe it was about after the 2014 election for sure. So 14 to 17, I'm not really sure what year it was, but I remember those board members being satisfied with the process. So I think it's worthy.
My only question, $300 in total cost or $300 per trustee?
I believe it's a one cost. And again, that's just for the self-evaluation tool. If we wanted to go forward with a consultant, that would be probably $2,000 to $4,000. I'm not recommending that. I don't think we need that, but
I didn't do that last time. We received the results and then we evaluated them ourselves.
Last time we had a consultant foisted upon us, it cost us about $10,000 and got us nowhere.
Trustee Montarch always puts it so poetically, but so accurately. I agree. I definitely appreciate the Trustee Smith, that background of a self-assessment tool is, I could be interested in that. I don't think we need a consultant. And absolutely, Trustee Montarch, no, I agree with you completely. Agree with you absolutely completely.
No way in Hades.
Yeah. Trustee Halverson.
Just a point of, I guess, what am I trying to say? A point of how this proceeds then. So we each do the assessment, the results are shared. And is that done then publicly at the next board meeting? And it would then be my suggestion, if that's the case, that perhaps we could also then publicly discuss board goals based on the results that we get and also on your recommendations then when we've had a chance to think about all this for more than just 10 minutes when I read it this morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly the expectation, that we'd bring the results back here. We'd have discussion about the results, and some of the results might lead us to consider different board goals that we might not have considered had we not had results.
I suspect we'll all take the self-evaluation fairly quickly. We'll get the results back fairly quickly. We'll have a couple of weeks to cogitate on the results of them all, and that'll help inform us as to whether there's some different goals we want to shoot for in the next year than the ones we had in the previous year. So I agree, and we should be able to do that at the April meeting, because I don't envision the self-assessment will take us too terribly long.
I think it's fair. We've gone through a lot as a governance team, and we've definitely bonded, and I think it always offers times to reflect and self-assess. So I think this is a fitting and appropriate time.
I'd make a motion that we authorize the electronic board self-evaluation tool method.
Second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Yes?
Yes.
Passes 5-0. Thank you. Now we'll go on to agenda item 10.2, discussion regarding updated board goals.
So this, we can completely skip this item if you want and wait until we have results, but also you might have ideas now, and it is okay to, at least share for now what you see in the board goals and maybe feel are not as much of priorities as they were before for us to, obviously we're doing a lot more in this district besides what's on this sheet, right? But these are the priorities that we listed. So maybe our priorities have shifted. Maybe some of these things might come off. Maybe we want to think about adding. So, this could be the beginning of conversation around how you're feeling about those board goals. And then we can refine that in the next meeting after we've seen the evaluation.
This is a discussion item, not an action item, so we can't make this change tonight, but my recommendation, as I've shared before, goal 3, item B, is that it reads to improve relationships with community organizations such as our PTAs, PTOs, NPA, OEF, the city and the local paper and other groups. But I would like us to add to that faculty and staff, improve relationships with faculty and staff as well.
I would also, I think, I'll be really excited to see the self-assessment. But as always, I'll reaffirm, I think what I'm really, really interested in right now, which is we've gone through a gnarly, and I use that word objectively, I guess, a gnarly financial situation these past few years. And we've done a lot of work to stabilize. Now that we've stabilized and we have a very, very skilled CBO, thank you, Mr. Olson, for being here with us. The focus moving forward really has to be academic programming. What can we do now to demonstrate to our community and also to our students the quality education programs that we can offer in this school district for all of our students? So to me, now that we've stabilized that financial piece, we can't do anything until we have a good, sound financial footing, and we have that, I believe. Now we have to launch forward, springboard forward into high level academic programming. So to me, I think that's also why I'm very excited, continue to be excited for our leadership and Dr. Knox here, whose background is in academic programming and educational services. So that to me, I think is becoming more and more of a priority and more paramount as we really rebound out of this crisis. That's what we need to show moving forward.
Are you suggesting that become goal 1 instead of goal 2?
I don't know.
I would.
I don't know. Yeah.
We're never going to forget our obligation for fiscal solvency and making sure we do things in a fiscally correct manner. But when I look through items A through D, it looks like we've turned the corner on all of those. And I tend to agree with Trustee Reyes that that should be of lower priority than the academic achievement, the academic programming, and I would tend to think that I'll probably suggest when we get around to it that within the rubric of academic programming, we include CTEs and the arts and electives and even our athletic programs. I think those are all part of a strong academic program, so that we might want to see what we think about ways to improve each of those. Even though some of them are exemplary already, you can always improve.
And I think I would be really interested in that discussion too, how we can incorporate our marginalized groups, our English language learners, our long-term English language learners, which we're getting really good data that we have more work to do there. So how can we be targeted in that academic programming for these really important programs that also when we know the demographics of our community. So I think that's something that's really, really important to me as we get to that discussion. Trustee Alverson?
I'd also like to add workforce housing as a board goal. I think that we can discuss it next time, but I think, we're going through iterations and we're about to make a very important, to get a feasibility study, but I think we're not being completely clear with the community if the 5 of us don't all soundly say that we all support developing workforce housing on the former Chaparral legacy campus, and it's our intention to continue to have that as a priority over certainly for the 25-26 school year and likely on as it takes time. We can discuss that more next time, but it's I want to be very clear. My position is I absolutely want workforce housing on the downtown property. So I think I may think we're at the point we ought to be able to put it as a goal.
Absolutely. And I guess I'll throw this last thing in here too, and I don't know how it'll fold in, but I'll look to you, Dr. Knox, is we know in our community, in our district, we just need to get families into our district. Once they get into our district, they don't want to leave. We have a really, really good culture and a really strong district. So creative ways we can really strengthen that entry point. Also for youngsters, what's happening at Miners Oaks, at Moe's is unbelievable. how can we continue to support that expanded? I know we talk about potentially an infant program. I think that would be phenomenal. But not just when you have a youngster. If you're trying to enter at any point in your child's educational journey, whether it's elementary, junior high, high school, we know once folks enter our school system, they will stay. So how do we be intentional with that? So that's all I would add. Seeing no further comments from the trustees, it's not an action item, but I think we'll have a good conversation next meeting. Trustee Moncharge.
I just think we should direct staff and our board president to make sure that this comes back as an agenda item next month.
Will do. Okay. All right. Now we'll move on to agenda item 11.1, Measure J and K Projects Monthly Report. As always, Mr. Alan White, thank you for being here with us tonight.
Yes, good evening. It's a pleasure. So you have the bond update report that I sent out earlier, but there are always things that happen between the almost 2 weeks when I have to turn that in before that. So a couple of things have gone on. The stadium bleachers, that project with stadium bleachers and lights, that has been submitted to DSA. They did the submission thing. They have acknowledged their receipt and deemed that submission complete. So what that means is they will now take those plans and they'll review them and they'll make comments. And when they make comments, then the architect will respond to those comments and say, this is, explain whatever their questions may be. And when we get comments on the bleachers, that's the point at which we can go to Southern Bleacher and say, these are the comments that we got. Let's start the build clock and let's start, put us in the queue for being built, because the bleachers are 150 to 180 day build. And so there is a slight risk, some risk in that, in saying that we don't have a stamped set from DSA, but we know what they're looking at. So we can address those issues and hopefully we'll get the stamp set back, which takes, roughly 6 weeks before. So we might get the comments in 2 weeks. So if we can let Southern Bleacher know this is a go, we save a month of that 150 to 180 days. And so that's the process. We also have submitted the plans for the landscaping renovation in the quad between the C and D buildings, and we don't have that confirmation back that it's considered submission complete, but it has been submitted to DSA. And we thought there was going to be a delay on that, but somehow we managed to sneak it in. So that's kind of good news for us. That's about those two things. We had our COC meeting last week, and we have another COC meeting, Citizens Oversight Committee meeting tomorrow night, or tomorrow afternoon, evening, 4:30. And we anticipate that the expectation, I should say, from the committee is that they'll be able to take the draft of the annual report and turn that into a final document that they'll approve. So the requirement is that we submit that to the school board by June 30th. We're going to have it early as we did last year, it looks like.
A question, because you so boldly put it up there, the ATP project, which I realize is not a school district project, but and maybe we should comment on this next month when we see where it ends up. But I work right just across the street from there. I still don't understand it. I understand it.
I don't understand.
I understand it's a wider sidewalk, which I guess is good, although everybody doesn't get dropped off on the sidewalk now. They get dropped off in the school. But I believe now that's going to be a one-way bike, and to me that means the other side is going to be the other direction. I don't see how they can get two-way bike on that 6 foot.
What's supposed to happen
strip.
there?
They can.
According to the plans, what's supposed to happen there is that there is a bike lane going each direction on the south side of Maricopa Highway. It's at least 12. No, on the
concrete
sidewalk.
Yeah.
Sidewalk, I think,
The
is
sidewalk
12
is the
feet
bike.
wide. So I think there's 4 feet for each of the lanes going each direction, and an additional 4 feet for people walking.
It's such a puzzle because it was supposed to be a 16-foot sidewalk to do that, but the street is paved as if there's a bike path on the street.
Right.
And the bikes are using it as a bike path. Yes.
No, I got to tell you, I've been there almost every day the last week, and I've seen people riding bikes on the sidewalk.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Bizarre.
Well, one of the things that we lost was the drop off, the street side drop off is lost now because there's no street side drop off there.
Question I would have, are, are there, are they done or are they going to put barriers on that sidewalk to separate the bike lanes from the pedestrians walking, or do we not know that?
No.
My understanding is that from the curb out to where the lane begins that you drive in, that zone there, which is about the width of a lane, is kind of a no-fly zone. And it'll be striped off as chevrons or whatever, so you're not supposed to be in there. There's no parking in there. And then the sidewalk will have the two directions of bicycles
Painted.
and also pedestrians. Originally, 4 feet of that was going to be a DG path for the pedestrians, but they did decide to go ahead and to put concrete there. The other side of the street, the north side, is still a one-way bike lane for going that direction. So
I can tell you in a couple of places I've been where they've had bike paths like that, what they typically do is they just mark it one way and the other way, and both bicycles and pedestrians share the lanes going each way.
'Cause I think I just don't want bikes hitting people walking. So I was curious if there was a barrier, but okay, not our project.
my concern is that as you're coming out of, when you're used to looking when you're driving a car left, right, left, and for traffic, and now you're going to have to let left and make sure you're not expecting a bicycle on that lane coming. So it'll take some getting used to.
Okay, thank you.
And then it changes as it gets to the commercial part of the street. But the problem that I think that does affect the school district is that if you leave any of the doctor's offices or hospitals, you can only make a right-hand turn, and halfway up the block where you used to be able to make a U-turn, you cannot. So you cannot get back to other areas of town unless you drive through Miners Oaks, or if you drive up El Paseo to Ojai.
You
No,
turn
it's not El Paseo.
turn on to
Roll.
turn on to
Church.
Churchdale Roblox.
Yeah.
turn on
yeah, you
turn
can,
on Pyrie Road
but I do wonder.
and then go back out.
because I've been guilty myself of driving into the Nordhoff parking lot so that I can get back to Miramont.
By the way, one thing for consideration now that we're talking about it, and we're talking about the danger of pulling out of that parking lot in the future and whatever, we might want to either invest in or see if the city will invest for us in a couple of signs that say, look both ways or whatever for all cars exiting those egress positions,
say that-
because like you're saying, you're used to looking left, right, left. You're not used to looking for bicycles necessarily coming that way. And just, the city could probably shell out a couple $100 for a few signs so that it's safer for all of us.
I will say that the city has been very good and very, very interested in helping the school in terms of cooperation during the project. Granite Construction, not so much. There was a communication lag between the meetings we'd have that included the city and Granite, and that person that was in that meeting somehow didn't necessarily communicate with the people doing the work on the ground. So,
Just a thought that since you raised the idea of people having to be extra careful looking both ways, maybe you could go to somebody at the city and ask them for some signage that would help accomplish that.
make a note right now.
All right. Anything else on the ATP project? Okay, good.
I have
another
Well,
component.
a couple of things here. Congratulations on the Miramonte Kitchen project finally getting approved. And that's not something we've budgeted yet, right?
It is on the master budget, but it is not something we've
We've not encumbered yet. So that's another thing that we're going to need to encumber. And then also, I'm just curious at Miners Oaks, a discussion of removing or relocating a building at the back of the campus. What building are you referring to?
Okay, so there's a portable building that is done by the Child Development Resources. Is that what it's called? CDR. And they own that building. They
Right.
leased the land from us.
Right.
And we wanted that space because the hammerhead for fire department and things to turn around that parking lot really isn't adequate.
Is that on the north side of
It's on the south side of the school. So if you're driving down Miners Oaks on that road that goes on the south side between us and the meadow, then that gets you run right into the building at the back there.
All right.
And so
Okay.
So that they are contractually required to remove that building at the end of the lease. And what we did was last year when we finished the library in July, or actually before July, they moved into 2 of the rooms in that same wing where the library is at Miners Oaks. And so they've now sort of abandoned that building and have moved into classrooms that we're providing to them. And it's incumbent upon them to remove that building. They're willing to do that, but they're like, where do we put it? We don't have a good spot to put it. So one of the things that they talked about was the possibility of moving that building closer to that wing where the kind of where the orchard is now. And there used to be portable buildings there in what is now the orchard. And if that would allow them potentially to expand their reach in what they're doing with the CDR kids. That's just an idea at this point. It's not anything that's been committed to. One of the things that talked about in leadership was that that lease is up either September this year or next. I haven't looked it up yet, but that's an opportunity for us to sort of discuss with the management of CDR. What are your plans? What are our plans? How do they fit together? What are things that we should look at in the lease that might want to change? So, and that's Dr. Knox is pursuing that. So,
While I'm on Miners Oaks just for a second, there's a nice play field out in the back of the school, softball, soccer, all that kind of stuff. Do we use those? That play area back there?
To some degree, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was just curious. It looks like a nice field that maybe could be utilized, maybe by people who are interested in renting some of our space for activities for some things like
It has been used by baseball and
softball teams or teams practicing soccer or something. I mean, every time I walk past it, and I walk past there once or twice a week, going to the meadows and walking around and stuff, I don't see anybody out there. It's just, yeah.
Yeah.
David just informed me that is being rented.
It is.
We rent it out. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So not to hammer it, the CDR building, but isn't that also in the area where our FFA would like to see a barn at some point? So it'd be in our best interest to move that.
Generally in that side of the campus, yeah.
And I suspect our Food for Thought partnership would not be happy with a building taking over the orchard. They're very proud of that facility.
Right, and it would only be a small segment at one end of the orchard, but yeah, there are a few trees that would need to be transplanted.
But sorry, go ahead, Trustee.
Ultimately, maybe that's where you're going. Measure K funds would not be required for moving that building.
No, in fact, we would gain, there are some renovations to the sewer system in that area that we would ask them to do as a part of that project.
Got it. Only question I have, Alan, I think we've talked about it briefly a little bit, so apologies to kind of spring it on you, but Nordhoff and softball. And I love it. We have very, very passionate softball family members, and they do a really, really good job running that team. Now, I know that there are plans the district has for the softball field in a much larger component, but I'm curious just, I hear a lot about dirt on the softball field and rain and things like that. I apologize. I don't know if you can comment on it.
There's some
just
work
curious.
in progress on the pitcher's mound and some of the things there. One of the issues is that the pitcher's mound appears lower than it would typically be because it slopes up. So to get the right the elevation relationship between the top of the pitcher's mound and home plate, some of that elevation happens before you get to the mound. So the ratio is right for whatever it's supposed to be, but it doesn't look right. So there is some work to be done in there. There's some work to be done in the infield. We are doing some work on the outfield fence that's beginning now. So originally in the budget, we had $750,000 at Nordhoff for field renovations. We've used some of that for the futsal court that we did over in the 7-8 grade area. And we've used some of it for some of those kinds of related projects. The CD quad project will take up some of that 750,000. And right now, by my recollection, there's about 550,000 of that left, minus what we use in the CD quad, which might be a couple $100,000. So.
Thank you for that clarification. Okay, any questions on Measure K and J? Okay,
Okay.
seeing
I
none.
had a couple more things.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just want to let you know, Because we are expecting this $3 million microgrid rebate, but it hasn't come yet, and Kevin's been working diligently on that. He asked me, and we've been working together on sort of looking at our projects that we have in the queue, and is related to the earlier discussion on how much bond money we have left. What projects will that $3 million actually fund when it comes in? And if it's that 2.7 or 3 million, whatever it ends up being. So we're looking at our projects now, and I've been working on what we actually have in progress, like the pool and the stadium and things like that, and what we think we can do, the B projects. So he and I are going to have that discussion here in the next few days, because I just sent him my version of here's what I think we should do. And then we'll have that discussion to sort of redline some things. So that, I just want to let you know that that's going on. We're cognizant of all the constraints with the money, and we're working on developing a plan that keeps us, moving forward.
I noticed that is currently in the COC report that will come to us before June, but I noticed that you had that attachment.
Yes, and that's actually a slightly different attachment than what I'm working on for Kevin, but it's the same general information. Yeah, it lists all the projects and things. So yeah, so there's that. And then one more thing. Oh, I wanted to tell you that the pool is on target. We're doing well. Even with the rain, we should have lost like 10 days so far. We've lost 5. And so there's 23 in the schedule that we're allowed to lose. And so we're doing well with that. I do have a little slide presentation if we can take.
Do we have a video too, by chance?
I didn't put the video up this week. It goes so fast. I thought, we did put it on the website. Amanda has it on the website. So I thought what we would do here today is just show you. This is October 30th. And if we can get that. Oh, there we go. Okay. So, and there's our superintendent and some of our board members, and of course myself and the contractors. And so that's October 30th. That's where we were. And go to the next slide. Here's where we were on January 6th. No insurrections, but this is where we were on January 6th. And then now today, here we are today. You see there are lights built into the pool there. That is going to look so awesome when all those lights are on. And then we have the building on the far side over here. You can see there are, right in here, there are 3 courses of block that are already up. By the end of the week, we'll start to see blocks on this other building over here where the bleachers are. So there's stubbed off electrical and rebar and all kinds of things.
Are they, can I ask, are they in-ground bleachers or like in cement? What are the bleachers?
No, the
by?
bleachers are, obviously tiered, and they're sort of a, what would you call that shape? It's like a elliptical shape. It's wings on each side. So and it's between like the concession building and a storage building and a bathroom. So
will there be any like shade cover over the bleachers?
yes, it has a canopy over it.
Question, I probably should have asked this a long time ago, but for any of the swimmers in the audience, is this pool going to have gutters?
Yes, absolutely. I'll show you.
Wow. They're there?
See these panels?
Wow.
Sitting in the gutter. You can see the gutter better here.
That's fantastic. That's great for swimmers too, because it allows the water to dissipate and not,
Right.
when you do your flip turns, you're not hitting the wall of water that's
That
hitting.
was one of
That's
the original
fantastic.
design concerns, and so we.
Question here I asked also Dr. Knox, is the floor of the pool, will it just be normal, or will there be like an N on there or a Rangers?
There's no logo, but there will be lanes.
Okay, got
There
it.
are black tile lanes.
Got it.
And then the rest
Thank
of
you.
it is plaster.
Yeah.
How much does a logo cost? Can we add it? I'm just kidding. It would be so cool. A logo?
That's not out of the realm of possibility. We could look into that.
We could probably get Chief Peak to paint it.
He's a builder. He's not a painter. In fact, I've seen him paint. I would suggest you don't.
Would you like me to ask our architect to look at?
Probably not on the
lo-
floor because it'll interfere with the lane lines unless it's, small
I don't-
width, but maybe on the side.
Yeah,
Are we putting tile in?
That look cool.
Yes, there's tile for the lanes.
What color's the tile?
There's tile at the top edge.
Yeah, what color is it?
Could we replace some of the particular blue
I don't
with
know.
Ranger blue in the area where the N goes? I
That,
mean, really?
that decision hasn't been done, so we could do a Ranger blue just on the
Or
board.
if students could paint the tiles, that
Could
would
be
be
a
really,
Ranger
really
blue.
nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any blue should be a Ranger blue.
We actually could put small logos on each tile if you wanted to, or some of them, like an accent tile.
Trustee
I-
See what it
Halverson.
looks
Yeah, I just have two non-artistic comments to make. First of all, if you look past the pool and you see that space, do you see the space? Thank you, Mr. White. So for those of you who saw that picture and I heard audible gasps because you hadn't seen it, it's a lovely walk to park, walk around, and that is wide open viewing back there. They even, if you just want to gaze at it, you can sit on the stands that are back
Yeah,
there.
there are bleachers there.
And I do that every Saturday. And I did in 1968 participate in building a small swimming pool for the community of Winnebago, Minnesota as a 13-year-old, and I got to run a stomper because our community built all of the surrounding stuff and all our
You
we
ran the
just paid.
jumping jack.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, you don't need to hear my 57-year-old memory, but the other 1968. The other thing though is I was there last Saturday and they poured all of that concrete not in the middle but around the side on Saturday because they had been rained out. I presume they were catching up because they'd been rained out during the week. I was amazed they were pouring concrete on a Saturday.
And the reason they were because it rained this week. That there was expectation.
they were trying to
of
get
rain this
ahead
week,
of
So
it.
they were trying to get ahead of this week's rain because for one thing, you have all these open trenches, right? And you've got your rebar in there. So now the rain comes along, washes a bunch of stuff into the trench. How are you going to dig that out with all the rebar in there?
Yeah.
So they were thinking it's going to be easier to hit, to sacrifice our Saturday than to repair the damage the rain could potentially cause.
Yeah, it was very. I mean, I went there at 2
guys were
o'clock. 2 o'clock, and there were at least 8 guys working, and the pumper
They
was out
started
there. It was
pouring at
amazing.
11. The first truck got there at 11 and they were done at 2:30.
Yeah, it's amazing to see them working on a Saturday.
Is the kiosk in the area where the construction trailers are, or is it behind those?
Got it. Okay.
Can I
Any-
ask one
yes.
last thing? How many people do the bleachers fit? Hold. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm just
Um,
curious because I was at another
Yeah, they
school.
allow 18 inches per
I wish
seat.
there was
There's
more.
5 levels and it's roughly starts at 50 and probably goes down to 30 feet. So somewhere in the area of 120 people.
Thank you.
One last question, sorry. Because you pointed out here the generation from the solar generation and the estimates and all of the other lovely things that are saved because of it. When do we see a monetary reduction in our Edison costs?
We've already seen that. Yeah. Yeah. And I've verified some of these numbers. A couple months ago, I verified some of these numbers against, what I got with Ryan and said, what did it used to be? What is it now? That's the only really comparison I have. It's not true comparison because our electrical use changes. But yeah, we are definitely seeing that. And hopefully that's helping budget numbers.
Fantastic. No, really. And good reminder there, Trustee Smith, as well. Okay. You can tell we're very, very excited about this pool, Mr. White. Any other questions from the trustees? Seeing none, okay, we'll go on to agenda item 11.2, update on Nordhoff Stadium and pool. Oh, yes, Mr.
One more
White, go
slide,
ahead.
Sorry.
Oh, I keep interrupting you. Go.
Okay, so one more slide, please. This is the pump pit and the backwash pit, and right over in here between the pool and this building is a surge pit that allows the pool to maintain a constant level. And then you can see over in this picture some of the block that was put in today. So I just want to show that. And then if we go one more, we'll go to the microgrid. And so this is right next to the gym. This is the gym building here. And then this is all the underground work that's going in to install the microgrid equipment. So I think on the 25th, I think the schedule says we're going to pour concrete in this area. And then when the equipment gets here, mid to late April, they'll start installing it. So hopefully end of May, June, something like that, we'll see the microgrid fully operational. And it's going to do it. I was participated in a Zoom meeting where the switchgear was all tested in Houston, where it's being made, and it does some really trick stuff. It's really awesome. Yeah, so
Fantastic. And that microgrid, just
can't see this,
unbelievable.
camouflage.
Unbelievable. Okay, any questions? Seeing none, thank you,
That is my
Mr.
report.
White.
You can-
That's the report. Now we'll go on to agenda item 11.2, very feeds right into it, Nordhoff Stadium and Pool projects. Okay, and, or was that already it? Yeah, that was it. Look at that. We're flying. Now we'll go on to agenda item 11.3. This is approval of bid from Creative Construction for Nordhoff High School quad restoration, project 1514. Take it away, Mr. White.
Okay, so when we did this quad in 2019, the designer was trying to comply with some ecology things, and they put in a watering system for the grass areas that was underground soaker hoses, basically. And it failed because the gophers liked the water, and it just was a bad idea. If you want to pitch a tent and you drive a stake in the ground, you're going to hit something every 10 inches. So it was a bad idea that didn't work. And so that area, it looked beautiful for a few weeks, and then it didn't. So we would like to go in and remove that grass, put in gopher screens around the perimeters, replace the soaker hoses with sprinklers like we use everywhere else on every campus, and also do some other, and the valving and everything's already there for the water. We can reuse that. We don't have to do that. We just have to put in sprinkler lines. And then so this gopher wire, the renovation, taking it down, putting new sod in, making it beautiful again, is what this project is about, and functional.
Just a quick question. CD required DSA approval, yes?
Yes, this does not. This is maintenance.
Oh, okay. And well, you don't have, you can tell me after the meeting, or I'll email you what the difference is, but I'm just glad this doesn't require DSA approval too.
Correct. It's below, one reason CD quad is it's above the cost threshold. The DSA has 119,600. This is way below that.
And is this sorry, I'm trying to look for it, but I can't find it. Is this the main, is this the main quad between
This
the
is the main quad
library and the
between the
cafeteria?
library
Okay,
and the
got it.
cafeteria,
Got it.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve? I'll move to approve. Is there a second? Second by trustee Brainy. All those in favor, say yes.
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 Yes. Passes 5-0. Thank you. Now we'll go on to agenda item 11.4, approval of quote from Pacific Com for new digital bell announcement system for Topa Topa Elementary School. It is an action item. I don't know, Dr. Knox or Mr. White, whoever would like to take this.
Only if you have questions. It's really not a bond project, but David put this proposal together, and I believe some of our other schools have already had these upgrades, so it's Topa Topa's turn.
It does come out of the bond IT budget.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
It's already been encumbered, as the last one we just approved was already encumbered also.
Got it.
Any questions from the board for Mr. White or Mr. Rogers?
And the one coming up, the HVAC.
Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved by trustee Montrose. Is there a second?
Yes.
Second by trustee Smith. All those in favor?
Yes.
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 Yeah. Trustee Brainy? Oh,
No, I
okay.
said
That
yes,
passes 5-0. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Rogers, for making you walk up there,
No,
but
I publicly wanted to thank Mr. Rogers for his presentation. It was very good. Thanks.
very brief, Mr. Rogers.
Brief,
Thank
and you got us 5-0. It was well done.
Succinct, right?
you. Succinct. Okay, now agenda item 11.5. Here we go. Approval of 4 quotes from Green Globe HVAC Incorporated for HVAC replacement in 4 classrooms at Topa Topa Elementary School. This is an action item as well. First, are there any questions from the board on this? Seem pretty straightforward.
Hoping that cost was 4 wings, not 4 classrooms.
Yeah, there are rooftop units which get really expensive, and you have to get a crane, and it's difficult to get a crane access in there. So you need a bigger crane to get,
Okay. Any questions? Trustee Alverson?
No.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved by trustee Montes. Is there a second? I'll second. Second by trustee Reyes. All those in favor, say yes.
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 Yes, that passes 5-0. Thank you. Now we'll go on to agenda item 11.6. This is approval of annual update on the transportation plan. This is an action item. Dr. Knox?
This is simply an annual requirement. So if you have any questions, let me know. But other than that, I don't think we need to say much.
Motion to approve.
Seeing no questions, so moved by trustee Montrose, seconded by trustee Brainy. All those in favor say yes.
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 That passes 5-0. Thank you. Now we go on to agenda item 11.7, workforce housing update. It's information/action item. I'll turn it over to Mr. Olson.
Okay, I actually anticipated this to be after the rest of the other conversation, the feasibility. I hadn't worked my way down yet, but I'll just give you the board. This is just a quick update tonight. You know, we later on, we're going to talk about our feasibility proposal that we're hoping the board will consider and approve. But, you know, as part of that, we sent out 2 RFPs, one for architectural services in support of the feasibility and one for the feasibility. And, you know, we did receive 10 proposals from architectural firms for that part. And we reviewed it as part of our committee. And so we decided, you know, in talking with the committee and in talking with Brookwood Partners, that it would be best to wait to onboard Brookwood in order to kind of understand more of the scope of architectural services that they need within feasibility to deliver, you know, what we're hoping to do as far as a final RFP package for, you know, a developer or a design build team to really get the project going, you know, final contract to design and build a project. So, and most of it's outlined here. I can let Trustee Monchar, who's part of the process, fill in, you know, any gaps that he feels would be appropriate. But
we just decided it would be better to hold off a bit on making a determination on who we were going to recommend for architectural services till we had the feasibility people on board, find out a little bit more specifically about what they need. The group we're recommending can do these kinds of things for us, but for various reasons, our local committee thought we might want to go with a local architect to provide those services. So basically, all we're going to end up doing, assuming we approve the agreement to onboard the feasibility study in the next month or 2, we'll come back with our committee's executive summary and recommendations regarding the 10 architectural RFPs we received and which one or ones we want to recommend to the board for consideration if we have a consensus amongst us. So that's basically where we are.
Technically, this is just an information item, not an action item.
No, yeah, this is just
information.
Just on that portion, because we have 2 more. We have feasibility coming up. That's action, and then some funding. Yeah.
Seeing any questions? No. Okay, yeah, I think we can move on to agenda item 11.8. Funding for the feasibility study. This is an action item. Now I'll turn it over to either Mr. Olson, Dr. Knox, Trustee Montrose might want to say some things.
I'll get us going.
Go ahead, Mr. Olson.
And you know, as part of, again, on the agenda, we yes, sorry.
It's a PowerPoint, correct?
You can just thumb through the PDF if you want. Doesn't have to be. I don't have any animations.
Our community at
that are
home
required
doesn't have that.
But can we pull up the attached presentation I had? Really, it's just to guide the conversation. So, sorry, the one that's attached to the feasibility, the funding, the feasibility. So, which was 11.8.
Yeah, it's just a little PowerPoint here. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. So, as in the summary of the item, you know, we need to consider how we're going to fund our feasibility. We took kind of a broad scope of just giving the board all options. And we did make, administration did make a recommendation, you know, with that, but we're open to discussing, you know, all options, which would include, and I'll go over to the presentation. So using the general fund, borrowing money essentially, or finding other entities to pay for it, such as grants or partners. So those are the 3 broad scopes. And then, you know, borrowing money has some nuance to that discussion. The question is, who do we borrow money from? Do we want to go and talk to traditional lenders? You know, we can go to a bank and we can say, hey, you know, we don't want to use any of our own money. Will you give us a loan of some sort? Or we can borrow money internally. So those are the 2 options. I'll say, so the board has obviously weighed in many times that they do not intend to use any general fund money to fund the workforce housing project. So I'll remind the board of that, which is why administration is not recommending using the general fund, which is mostly used to fund and operate our district on a day-to-day basis. Salaries, benefits, maintenance, operations, those things are our general fund. Again, traditional borrowing, we could go to a bank. That would create some complications still, though, because one, there'd be interest costs, and most of the time, granted, we could go out and try to negotiate some type of lump sum, payment at the end of a term, but most loans come like your mortgage, where you have to make intermittent payments, in which we would still need to access money for our, from ourselves to make those payments. So it doesn't.
Yeah. Can we interrupt
Sorry.
and make sure that, yeah, David, would you mind sliding down to the borrow money slide?
Yeah, I'm on borrow money now. There we go. So again, we could go out to a bank and we wouldn't have to use general fund money necessarily, and the bulk of it up front would come from the bank, but we'd have to make intermittent payments and figure out where our cash is coming from at that point, unless, again, we really worked hard to negotiate a particular deal, which leaves us with borrow money from ourselves, essentially, what we would call interfund borrowing, which is allowed per education code 42603. And basically it allows for short-term borrowing of cash. In all honesty, the district does that already. Normally in June, there's 3 or 4 form resolutions that the board passes every single year, which allows a district to do, this is one of them. It allows us to move cash between funds in order to meet our short-term obligations. So the board has already actually authorized administration to move cash in order to meet our short-term obligations. We haven't really had to do that this year, or I don't think last year, but traditionally for many years, a good example of why we needed that authorization kind of blanketly was because our child nutrition fund, which was always, on a shoestring budget, the payments from the federal government would take a long time, and so they would run out of cash to pay because it's a different fund, and so we would have to give that fund cash. So even though we have all these the different pots of money actually are almost like different bank accounts, with the county, and they don't like any of them to go negative, right? So we would have to give Fund 13 cash, a short-term cash loan in order to operate in the past. That was a very standard thing. So it would be very similar to that because of the timing of this, because it's within the last, I think, 120 days of the school year. We would actually get a whole nother school year in order to repay it. So we'd have until June of 26 to work on considering other options. I will say, it could be unlikely that at that point we have figured out the financing part of the major project. Hopefully at that point we are designing and moving forward, but we might not have financed that project. So we might have to come back to the board and say, okay, do we want to expense this out, under developer fees or somewhere else? Even if we expense it, we can still say, we want to count it as a cost of this project, and when we finance it, we want to put that money back in developer fees and use it for another facilities project. So we still could even at that point do that, but this really it's the best way to buy the district time, I would say. It doesn't cost us interest. And even within that, again, it gives us time till June of next year to work on our third option, which has always been, the highest desire, which is find somebody else to pay for it, right? Find a grant, which we have found a few people in the past, but their time frame hasn't worked for us. I've talked to the county more about, well, you still have that. We're moved on by ourselves, but maybe you can still, this is going to be the cost now. Maybe you can still fund it, even though we're doing it independently. I haven't had much traction with that conversation yet, but we'll see. We'll keep working on it. So again, I've done all the talking here, but this is a discussion for the board. I believe it is up for action. Again, technically the board has given us authorization, but we'd like to, get an action item so that we clear guidance from the board on what to do.
Trustee Alverson.
Thank you. I have several questions, sorry. First question is, what fund are we borrowing it from?
We would propose that we borrow from developer fees, which has about $2.29 million currently cash.
How was that, how was the developer fees funded to get to 2.2 million?
Developer fees are the fees that we levy on any home improvements and or new construction within our district's boundaries. Normally in December, which I think it was last December, the board approved an update to a developer fee study, which levies a per square foot fee on any new construction and remodels and upgrades within our boundaries.
Within the boundaries of our school properties.
Our school, within our
District.
school and district boundaries.
The concept, and sorry to interrupt you,
Yeah,
Chris,
please
the
explain this. So
It-
this is not just building
Yes.
school buildings.
Yes.
People
So-
build homes and they put money into development.
So yes, so let me take a stab at this, and you tell me if I'm right or I'm wrong. It's okay. When people add additions, when people make additions to their homes, the concept being, or buildings, or build, you may very well be adding more people to our community, which will directly impact the public school district in that community. So you get a fee added to your building permits or your building costs. That fee goes straight to the school district, because the thinking is if you're going to add another floor on your house, or you're going to add another room in your house, that could be another person, which could be another student, which we may have to educate and have to house. So you're going to have a little fee on your building costs that's going to come to our school district, so we can update to be prepared for that.
And we have to keep those fees in a fund, and we cannot use those funds for general operating expenses like salaries and benefits.
Understood. I understood that. Why? What are the restrictions on the use of those fees? Why couldn't those fees just pay for the feasibility study, because we're looking to improve our facilities to attract more teachers, rather than we have to borrow it and pay it back?
Because it's for modernization and reconstruction of schools that affect student population.
School, so it doesn't go toward
Correct.
construction for workforce housing. That's why we borrow from it.
As the law has been currently interpreted.
Okay.
That's why. And so to be conservative, we want to make sure that we understand that unless things change, and of course things are changing because there's even two new bills have been introduced in the assembly recently to expand the ability of school districts to build housing, and they're talking about expanding the ability to use funds like this without having to necessarily pay them back. Hasn't come into law yet. So as things now stand, eventually we would have to come up with a way to put those monies back into the funds. It may be as late as when we actually develop the project.
Okay, I know now that it's real money, not theoretical money. It's actually sitting somewhere. It's earning interest. Good. And yet we can borrow it and not pay interest on it, which is great.
No,
Thank
we
you.
will be required to repay the interest to the developer fee fund
In
of the
addition
money
to
that
the
it would have
principal.
earned. Right, correct.
Oh, you just don't have to pay interest as it goes along, but if we're borrowing 96,000, we'll repay 101,000 at the end of, in June of 2026 or whatever it is. To do it, I understand.
Questions? We're still on questions. Questions, and then we'll go to
Paying
comments.
ourselves interest on what we would have earned on that account is a lot better than paying a commercial rate at a bank, right? Yeah.
I have a question. So say we did go that route, the route that administration is thinking is the best one. So the hope is that we don't have to pay the money back, that we would borrow from the developer's fees and then pay it back somehow, right? Well, we will, right? If we don't have another fund or another source of that income by the end of 2026, then we're potentially looking at having to use the general fund money. Or can you get some extension from that fund? Does it have to be paid back exactly that date? Or is there like, do you get my question?
Yeah, the flexibility, do we have flexibility within that date?
Right, so if we don't want to, if something doesn't happen, we still don't want to use general fund money to be paying for a feasibility study. Can we get an extension on paying back by that date, or?
At that point, if we were ready to have a conversation again, I would talk with our auditors to find out what they were comfortable with as far as our accounting maneuvers.
All right.
Questions still, and then we'll go to comments. I'll start first with a comment. Well, first, and I know I've thrown this out there a lot, but I really will throw this out here because I was talking to some folks at the Economic Development Collaborative, and they initially had an Uplift Central Coast grant, which was only around, it wasn't very big. It was just a few million for the 6 county region. So our chances of getting some money from that were very, very small. But now that that stage is done, I'm being told that the state is opening up $125 million in grant programs for projects that specifically address dislocations from COVID that have to do with equity and workforce development and climate change. And I think we can make a really strong argument that building housing in our community that has been impacted by COVID also has been impacted by skyrocketing housing prices. I think we can make a really strong, compelling argument for a grant application. So what I'm going to do after this meeting, no matter what we do, is I'm going to connect you, Mr. Olson, Dr. Knox, and probably even Trustee Montrose, or anyone who wants to be connected with the folks today that I was talking about that said, yep, send them my way. It is a tight turnaround for the grant, I'm being told, but I think that is absolutely a conversation worth having because I think we have a really strong, compelling argument here that may be able to help some of these concerns that I also have about borrowing money and how we're on the hook for that. I'm not opposed to the concept of borrowing internally. I understand that. I frankly get just a little nervous because the crisis that we all went through, that was a major component of that, of people borrowing money internally that, for lack of a better word, just it wasn't properly managed. And I feel a lot more comfortable now because we have a CBO. We didn't have a CBO then. And we do have people who are looking at this. So, and I hear the intentionality in your words, Mr. Olson, that this is a very serious maneuver that you all are focusing on. So I feel a lot better. But I think I still have some feelings about that. I imagine a lot of people do. So I'm really going to look to the board to see
We have
where
a
you are.
we have a specially earmarked fund now, which we didn't have under the prior administration. And that fund is specifically to deal with these kinds of things. Previously, borrowing was done without it going into a specially earmarked fund for anything special.
Clarification, the developer fee fund has always been there, but it wasn't a board action when those transfers were made from the bond to.
I think that,
Other-
sorry, Trustee
And
Smith,
I think
that's really, really important. It wasn't a board action.
I think Trustee Monstrich is also bringing up the idea that we've opened Fund 40, which is a special fund, which is where we're going to keep the expenditures. So everything in that fund is going to be related to this. There will be nothing else.
That's all that fund is for.
So we can always look at that fund and know what our workforce housing costs are.
Thank you. And hearing those things, sorry, just hearing those things, they relieve a lot of the concerns I have because I hear how focused you all are on this to get this right and that it is board approval. So thank you.
And I'll say this is not something that will go, obviously we're talking about this in the public. We use very specific accounts within our chart of accounts to do the interfund transfer between funds. So it's something that is always audited, on our balance sheet, a liability in one, an asset in the other. And so, but they're specific. So they're not intermingled with lots of other liabilities and assets. And so the auditors always look at that every end of the year. What interfund borrowing do you have? When did it occur? So it will not be something that is swept under the rug, disappeared, forgotten about, or frankly messed up.
Yeah, this is not going to be an audit red flag because it's going to be so transparent. All right.
Right, not an audit red flag. And actually, we have to have an annual accounting of what happens in those developer fee funds.
That's right. If we don't fund the feasibility study, we can't move forward. And we all want to build housing. So 2B is by far the best way to go, in my opinion, and I'll say no more.
Okay, seeing no further conversations, is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll move that we authorize the funding of our feasibility study through option 2B, and that we borrow from the developer fees, and let's just make it a round number, $100,000 to put into that account for those purposes.
Okay, there's the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Halverson. All those in favor say yes.
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 That passes 5-0. Thank you. Okay. Now I guess we're going to go on to the next thing, which is what feasibility study to potentially entertain and pick. So here we go. Agenda item 11.9. This is approval of feasibility study consulting contract. Yeah, did your internet just, my internet just,
Started to rain.
yeah, I think it's raining outside.
Wonder if we are still live up there? Potentially.
Don't know. Hello?
Oh, it just came back from
Okay.
me. Okay.
Coming and
Yeah,
going.
all right, we're back. Yep.
Okay, so just a reminder in case we did cut out there, agenda item 11.8 was just approved with the motion to utilize option 2B, correct?
Right.
To fund a feasibility study out of developer funds through an inter-fund loan transfer. And that passed 5-0 with Trustee Moncharch making the motion and Trustee Halverson seconding the motion and all trustees voting unanimously. Agenda item 11.9, approval of feasibility study consulting contract with Brookwood Partners for workforce housing projects. This is an action item. I can turn it over to Mr. Olson or Trustee
I'll
Moncharch.
go and try and short circuit this. You've all seen the executive summary. I wrote the executive summary at the request of our committee. We were unanimous in our recommendation. We provided you with all 4 proposals in detail because we wanted you to see them. I'm a proponent of seeing those kinds of things in addition to taking recommendations from staff. And so we all thought it was fair to do that all for all of us, even though we were all unanimous in our recommendation. Willing to answer questions. Trustee Smith sat on the committee with me. You know who else was? Mr. Olson. Phil Bagley, who's been a constant critic in the proper way of our district for the couple of years we've been on the board. And Ricky Horn, who spent 20 years as the president of this board.
As a school board member, many of those years were as president.
Yes. And by the way, Ms. Horn was the one who discussed with me initially the idea of the developer fees for the intra-fund transfer. So she put a lot of thought into this. Anyway, if you have any questions about the executive summary, feel free to ask us. If you have any questions about the proposals, feel free to ask us. But I got to tell you, we were unanimous in our feeling, and there's not really much more to say. I mean, these are the people who have done this stuff throughout the state of California and done it successfully, and all they do is K through 12 workforce housing projects. We couldn't have asked, in my opinion, for a better group to respond to our RFP. But again,
And we do have a couple gentlemen from Brookwood Partners here, and they did present a little kind of intro slash slideshow. So this is the Brookwood Partners slide deck, yeah, that we've pulled up a few times. If you're interested, they could go through kind of a summary of their proposal, what they would do for us, either now or after.
if you all want to, I don't know if you've all read all of the proposals. I mean, I'm assuming because I read everything.
Well, let's start here first. Let's start here. Are there first any questions from the trustees? And then we can move on to comments.
Just a comment. I want to thank the 5 committee members who spent all the time in the executive summary. It was really, really clear. I love bullet points. thank you for that work, and thank you for the people who are putting the time in to make something so easy to compare A versus B versus C versus D.
My comment, and absolutely echoing Trustee Halverson's comments, really, really appreciate the participation, that stakeholder group, especially our community members. And I really appreciate you, Trustee Monchash, using the word critic in the proper way. You know, we've had community members that have rightfully been critical and skeptical and have pushed us to be better. So to include them in this process, I think has been really, really helpful. And of course, Ricky Horn, the Honorable Ricky Horn, I really, really trust her read on this, and the unanimous recommendation is really powerful. My comments, and I'll keep it to this, I'll reaffirm how I felt about this project from the jump. And I'm not a developer, but I'm a working class renter in this town. This has to be affordable. This has to be an affordable project. Now, I know that sometimes can be thrown into an affordable housing project. I understand flexibility may be needed for development here. But we know who we want to build this housing for. It's for our employees, our teachers, and our staff. The last thing I ever want to do is turn our public land into a private development that brings in a lot of money for a private developer. It's not what our community deserves. It's not what our school district deserves. So I was very concerned about who would respond to these RFPs. And I was excited to see that we did have a lot of nonprofit developers. I was really interested to see their applications. However, I will say this, when reading Brookwood Partners, I was really, really impressed by the focus on understanding the affordable housing landscape and the need for grants, LIHTC grants, low-income tax credit grants, the lasagna funding. I felt that whoever really applied for this was listening to, I think, what a lot of us on this board are really pushing for, which is a project that fits in Ojai, that is affordable by Ojai staff. And I think even here, I was going to try to look for it in the document. It was somewhere stated that they, Brookwood Partners, would do the best they could to tee up a development for, but not limited to, affordable housing nonprofit developers, so that a feasibility study doesn't automatically restrict who could be the future developer, right? That the feasibility study is just the kickoff point. And if we're looking at a group that has the chops, has the background, has the experience, this project needs to work. It needs to have experts who are diving into this. So I feel a lot better seeing in this response an intentional focus on affordable housing and understanding the affordable financing. I know that might be a challenge in this new federal landscape, but that to me is paramount here. That to me is paramount here.
I will also tell you that we were unanimous in our view that they clearly understood our Exhibit A and what we're looking for, and clearly intend to take that into consideration as kind of the North Star for us, because we're not Daly City and we're not Santa Clara, we're not other places. We are weird Ojai. I mean, we have our desires that we've developed over the last year. We've been discussing this of kind of what we want it to look like and feel like. And they were the clearest in showing that they understood that, and they understand AB 2295 and all the ins and outs. I mean, this is all they do. They help people like us come up with the best plans for our needs. And so to coin an old phrase, they're the pros from Dover.
Okay, before we take action, I just want to check on the board. Do we want to hear a short presentation from the folks that came down here? I wouldn't mind
Yeah,
listening
I would
to a
like to
little
hear
bit.
Happy to hear from them.
And
you'd
I
like
would
to.
like to add that
Yes,
even
Trustee
though
Smith.
our Exhibit A is our a wish list that we've put out there, we are also would like to hear about other possibilities. So Exhibit A doesn't really address potential commercial areas, and so the best return for our property is what we're looking for.
Thank you, gentlemen. Please step on up, and if you could please introduce yourselves first, and then tell us what you think we'd need to know.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I have to tell you, we're thrilled to be here. And we sincerely are because it's an opportunity for us to work with another school district on something that we are very, to use the cliche, passionate about. Chris and I, and I'll introduce who we are in a second, but we used to be in the private sector, working for equity funds and developers doing significant projects. And both of us, although I am older, kind of hit a point in our careers and we said, we really want to shift our focus. And we did realize that where we could probably add the greatest value to those that, in development is in the sector of workforce housing. And as we continue to look, we realize really education housing is really where we can probably do our best work. So that's how we're here. I'm Alan Katz, one of the two principals and owners of Brookwood Partners. And this is Chris White, my partner also with Brookwood Partners. I want to tell you, this is very interesting, but Chris usually does introductory portions of these presentations. I will tell you he's not feeling well. So the good news is you get two principals, so one of us is still feeling well enough to speak. So you'll be hearing a lot from Chris moving forward on the project. If we could go forward. Thank you. We'll really talk about who we are, give you our literally 30 seconds initial overview on what we think about this wonderful site, and the scope and timeline that I know you're very interested in, and what we're going to be doing next. So with that, I've already talked a fair amount about why we're in workforce housing, but I think the list of items and all the reasons that you want workforce housing, we think we understand that at this point. Have worked with 10 different school districts. We're taking 2 projects through entitlements now. We got actually we have done the Jefferson Union High School District, which 122 units of housing, have worked for 7 years with Jefferson Union High School District. They are wonderful clients, and I like to think they think highly of us as well. So in fact, we did the housing, and now we've been working with them to create a revenue generation model for 18 acres, so that looking forward, they're going to be adding to their general fund. So that's, we're fortunate to be working with them on the project. There's a list, I'm not going to read them, of school districts, and we could probably go on to the next slide.
That's a quick question. I'm sorry. So have any of these, you said 7 years, when we look at that list, have several gotten all the way to finished, built, occupied?
Yes. Well, the Jefferson Union High School District is such a one. It actually is almost the model for school districts in California, and I invite you to and everyone here to come up, and we will tour you through the project. It has been open since May of 2022, fully leased, and turnover has dropped significantly to the point that this past year there were no openings in the certificated ranks. And I should say the housing is is split between certificated and classified. But, you know, it's been very successful in that sense.
So that preceded AB 2295 then, which should theoretically make the way a little smoother. I guess most of your other clients are likely in some part using AB 2295 for their process.
Yeah. It is very surprising, but there are a lot of reasons that you both that prevent you from using 2295, A, and then B, it also, if you choose to use it, there are limitations. So honestly, we've for many of the districts have not been recommending it and using it. I will say though, for your, on first blush, 2295 seems to be a very good use in your case. We will need to kind of verify the inclusionary housing requirements and how the city looks at those and how where your distribution, and we do this as part of our work, distribution of likely incomes vis-a-vis the area median income falls. We will be looking at that so that we can see that we will, you know, be consistent with 2295. And so we will be looking at different legislation. That's one option.
Yeah, 50%. Have any of the districts you've worked with, have you used AB 2295, or will we be the first one?
I think for 2295, you'll be the first one. We've looked into it for a number of districts and realized it wasn't right. But yes, you will be the first one that will follow it through if you use it. And I'm not prepared yet to sit here and say that we would recommend using it. Probably, but I can't tell you that.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question. And a couple of case studies. This is Cabrillo Unified School District. It's in the coastal zone, particularly difficult to work in, as you all know. But we're moving forward with entitlements now. It's been you know, we've had several meetings with the community in the past, have the direction set now, so we're prepared to go forward in April with the board. And next, this is your site. I promised that I would keep it super short. This, your site is incredible. And you know, it has the historic structures on it, which makes it special. It's special because it is right on, it's the center of town, right? I mean, what a unique location. I can honestly say we've never had the confluence of historic and right in the center of the town on a project. You know, and yet, even though it's commercial on its frontage, clearly housing on the back side of it, that makes it, you know, perfect for what you need. And you've got many options to consolidate some of those uses and move them off-site. I don't know what those are yet. I'm going to be talking with you we will be talking with you to find out what they are. But it's a great, you know, well, you know the site better than we do, but we will learn it so that we know it better than you soon. Okay. And then I'll just go over the schedule. I think I pretty much know it. But you know, the first part is 4 months of work in which we will spend the first couple of months collecting data, analyzing the data, understanding what your goals are. on the surface, we certainly know because you gave us a lot of information, but there's some nuances. You talked about, anywhere from 40 to 150 units. Why is that? Are those firm numbers? Where do they come from? What size units? Anyway, we plan to do, a study of kind of where the market is right now, understand what the rents are, so that we could work with you to determine what a discount to market is that you're looking for, and then work backwards from there. And I said, we're going to benchmark all the market, not all the market, the kind of the market rate projects that are perhaps applicable. What's important that's Chris and I bring to our feel for our firm is that, so often you hear, well, I don't want it from the teachers and classified. I don't want to live in teacher housing. I don't want to live in a ghetto. I don't want to live in a dormitory. I don't want to live in affordable housing, with this, the way it's perceived. And we really benchmark the project to a market rate so that when your staff is moving in, and they will love the units. Nothing luxurious, but very nice housing that any of us would want to live in. So that's one of our North Stars for the project.
Excuse me, question. Sorry, just clarifying question. When you say benchmark it to market rate, do you mean the aesthetic, the feel, or are you saying like the actual renting will be market rate? I just want to clarify when you say benchmark it to market rate.
No.
Can you clarify that?
Yeah. So, yeah, I appreciate the question. So the aesthetics, the quality, the feel, the environment, the amenities are benchmarked to what other market rates are going to be like. We will also look at what is kind of the market rate in terms of the amount of square footage that you would expect. And even, the internal amenities, as I mentioned, a lounge, a gym, what else is there? So balconies. So that's the kind of benchmarking that would be, we find very useful, and in boards and decision makers and administrative staff usually find that worthwhile too.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yep. After the first 2 months, we will have an architect on that we will be collaborating with and working with. And we look forward to that. So we'll probably internally have a good sense of what how many units we're going to be able to put on the site and such. But when we get into the final 2 months working with the architect, we'll be able to put together the budgets, be able to put together, some initial kind of elevations to understand really what the construction costs are. And to those construction costs, we will layer on the development costs, including the development fees that every developer has to pay. So we will be doing that, looking at the different funding approaches you can consider. And then finally, we won't shy away from making suggestions and suggesting how you should approach, not how, but what your next steps are and what we would recommend doing. But even saying that, we will give you the options so that you'll fully understand where the decisions are that you're being asked to make as we move through. And then the last part is the RFP for this development team. in which we can put together the proposal for use, the evaluation criteria, send it out to to developers who would be interested in this potentially as sort of project, and then assist with how to the interviews. So that portion we think would take, if everything runs smoothly and depending upon the demand in the marketplace at the time, which is soon, could be done as quickly as 3 months. So that's the schedule.
3 months, the phase 2 would take an additional 3 months from June till the fall? Or, okay. And does the contract, the 98,500, include both the initial phase and phase 2?
Yes, what it doesn't include is the negotiations with the developer, because there's no way of knowing. They could take 2 months, it could take a year and a half. So depending upon how complex the deal is that needs to be put together.
Thank you.
Next steps, the due diligence materials. In fact, Mr. Olson has already sent us a little bit of information which we have not looked at, pending approval here tonight. But we're ready to get going. And then we will, based on that information, we will want to talk with Department of Public Works and the Planning Department to suss out really the smooth, to hear what their issues are and what they feel that the board is going to need, in their opinion, to comply with. And then we'll try to mediate, and sometimes it's great news, sometimes it's not great news, but we'll try to interpret it for us as we move forward.
I have a I have a question. You mentioned when you were talking with your about your other clients' community meetings and you were moving forward. I love that. And I was wondering where in these phases community meetings lands. I see city discussions and inclusionary housing. And I was wondering where community
Engagement.
Yeah, where that works.
With the feasibility study, we would not anticipate community engagement with, more than hearing their comments. I mean, we're not going to have boards to show and what the scheme is going to look like. There will be, though, coffee and open houses and that sort of thing, which we find to be useful. But community engagement where we bring in complete drawings and have large presentations, I wouldn't anticipate. But I think, open houses where we say, Friday night or Sunday or whatever the right days would be, and we have people who could answer questions and get feedback, that's been pretty effective.
That sounds great. Where is that in this initial phase? Or is it phase 2? I'm just curious. I don't.
Yeah. But
typically, they'd be advising us on what we can do, what our options are as far as size, scope, et cetera, that kind of thing. They're not at the feasibility stage going to be presenting schematic diagrams of what it's going to look like built out and developed, et cetera, I don't think. That's what we do afterwards when we decide
Sorry, so we engage the community after they've given us a selection of options.
That's right.
Okay.
And Chris, I think I heard you say, I don't know if we all caught it, that typically the developer, and you're going to help us at least up to the, I don't know if you said you also help us select the developer, or you at least do the request for proposals so we can get, so you would help us up to selection of the developer. The developer, though, typically would do the community presentations or along with.
So, yeah, after the drawings are complete, not complete, but well enough along that information can then be translated for purposes of getting the planning approval and getting the right documentation in place. But, you know, it could be, yeah, I'll leave it at that. That,
Yeah.
we have not seen the architects, you know, we're going to help, you know, answer questions about what the architect can be doing. So, depending upon what their scope is, we will then be able to, you know, advise on the community meetings. But
Just really clear about it, the phase 1 and phase 2 that's in our proposal and the scope does not include community meetings. After options have been presented and you have selected an option, that's when you would go into the community.
Right. Typically is in conjunction with the developer to explain that, along with, I presume, representation from the board, et cetera.
Developer and or architect.
Yes.
And or architect. Okay, thank you. I'm
and
just trying to.
landscape architect. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
In my experience, just on the school side, where we've dealt with some renovations of historic buildings where we needed to do community meetings, the architect generally led that. The architect had drawings, proposals, normally a means of gathering information from the public that was meaningful for them within the development. Obviously, I attended, and you know, superintendent is welcome, board members attended, but the architect generally led the discussion because they have a way of, they want to engage the public regarding the development and the drawings of the project.
Mr. Katz, let me answer one of your questions. You saw in our proposal that we sent to you, our wish list kind of thing on our Exhibit A. We were talking about anywhere between 40 and 150 units, and you had a question as to where we came up with that. Simple answer is, we want from you all your discussions on basically 3 kinds of ranges of projects. A smaller project, which might fit better our current needs based upon our staffing size, which would be in the 40 to 50 to 60 unit range. A larger project, which might encompass kind of the top end of what we might be able to put on the site and still keep it with the feel we want to have, and a medium range. So that's where we came up with that wide range of possibilities. We're hoping for your expertise in giving us some guidance as to the 3 different types of ranges and how they might work out and how they might look and how they might fit, and maybe giving us some guidance as to which one of those ranges we ought to ultimately consider moving forward with. So that's why the wide range.
Got it. That's interesting. I had assumed incorrectly that there was, you know, specificity behind why the 150, but I now understand. You know, it was a guest pending study.
That's right. It's a guesstimate to try and get small, medium, and large proposals out there so you all can give us your guidance as to what works, what doesn't work, why it works or doesn't work. So that was it.
Got it. Thank you.
I have a question, and I understand a feasibility study, you know, it's not It's not the development proposal, right? It's not the development stage where then we go around and say, hey, this is development agreement. It's just the study, which we've heard from our community. And I think that meeting a year ago now, you all don't even have a feasibility study. So I think that's why we charted, let's go get a feasibility study so we know what we could build and what could be feasible to build. I had a question on something you mentioned about in the initial phase, and correct if I'm wrong if it was maybe the initial phase or the second phase, but trying to understand the inclusionary housing in the city. AB 2295, a component of it is at least 51% has to be affordable. So I think my question is a little bit around that focus on inclusionary housing, 51% affordable, and I'll clarify why I'm asking that question. I'm only one board member, but to me, I look at that 51% as a bare minimum where you could go higher than that, higher than 51% affordable in a project. Now, I'm also not a developer, so I understand I'm open to being educated on how you can actually get a realistic project done. But could you better clarify when you say understanding inclusionary housing, which to me in my mind is cities saying 15 to 20% affordable, when we're saying we really want to utilize, not want to, we plan to utilize AB 2295, which asserts at least 51% affordable, and some of us may want more than 51% affordable. Can you comment a little bit on that?
Yeah. The goal for the workforce housing is that every unit is affordable with a little a. But the 50% requirement in 2295, in which 50% needs to be either moderate or low, and then 30% needs to be low, I think, if I recall. So the reason we want to check into what the city's requirements is if we are going through the city without 2295, let's say, we want to make sure that we minimize the amount of housing that is going to be more bureaucratic for the staff. In other words, the way your credit is checked, if it meets the affordable requirements of inclusionary housing, it actually is more thorough and more intrusive than what you would want. So you would want to minimize the amount of what is considered kind of officially and can be counted towards RENA, the affordable housing. That doesn't mean that all of it isn't affordable. It just means that you want to try to minimize the amount that is deeded for the 55-year period, which the inclusionary housing typically is. Does that help?
It does help clarify. However, I will be honest, it makes me concerned hearing that. Because when I hear it is intrusive bureaucratically to understand people's credit scores, what the alternative to me, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, so I really want to understand this, but it then turns to me, the alternative is then a market rate unit. Can you clarify if I'm mishearing that?
Let me try to clarify.
Thank you.
So the school district is the owner and the operator of the project, like Jefferson Union is for Soto 5 Ceremony. That project met the city's inclusionary ordinance, which is 10% affordable at 70 AMI. The rest are theoretically market rate, but as a policy, they've decided to lease them at 40 to 50% discount to market rents. So that's what he meant by little a affordable. As a district policy, they're making them affordable to their employees, but they don't have to recheck the household income every year and go through those sort of administrative tasks. They can just do it with more freedom.
Got it. And I really appreciate that's the clarification I think I'm looking for, because I think if I hear that correctly, we could set aside a certain amount, but then in a district policy, make that even further clear that these are what we want to do. And I appreciate that because I also know our area and median income may also mean some of our employees, and I know it sounds wild to say this, might make a tiny little too much to qualify for some of that big A affordable housing. So that's why I'm open to understanding this flexibility, but I want to make it very clear what I'm understanding because as I said earlier, and I'll keep saying it because it is really, really important for a lot of people in this community where we see a lot of development attempt to happen of our land into truly market rate properties. And so that is something me personally, am very sensitive to. So that's why I want to understand the landscape when I'm frankly not a developer, I'm not a builder. So that clarification is helpful to me. Use the microphone, please, just so that folks can hear that.
It will all be, as Chris was saying, discounted to market considerably, so meant for your employees.
And I just want to reiterate, I think you're hearing it, that this board has been very much driven by 2295. So you'll have to make a strong argument why not to go that way, because that's what brought us here in the first place. So we're never having gone through it before, and apparently you have looked at it, that the driver behind this was 2295.
I'll be the member of the board working with you all, and I'll go into detail when we talk together. But there are lots of local reasons why we choose to do this ourselves if we can.
Yeah, no, I think we think probably 2295 is the right thing to do here. We just haven't started our work yet to study it and confirm that. That's all.
It's good to be transparent. And Laura, you said, well, we haven't done it before, and we're saying, well, it's our intention to do it that way. So we'll meet somewhere in between, I'm sure, but thanks.
The reason why we're bringing them on is to provide data for us to make those decisions, because right now we're operating in what we think, and they're going to bring what we know. So. And interestingly enough,
remember the law just came into effect in January.
Yeah, Chris. Yeah, our projects, it's just kind of odd. They just didn't qualify. One was adjacent to agriculture, so it didn't qualify. One, the district bought the land in the last year, so it didn't qualify. One is in the coastal zone, so there's too much sort of litigation risk to use it, and so it just happened to be that way.
And Jefferson is too old for it to have applied, right?
Pacifica and Jefferson Union both approved before 2095.
We've had many discussions, and I don't need to be the fourth person to tell you we're very interested in 2295. Having said that, there is also, I love that you said revenue generating, because that is very important to me. Not only do we want workforce housing for our staff and faculty, we hope that brings young children into the valley, which is something sorely needed. But I also don't want to forget that we have a lot of staff that need to have salary increases. And the only way, or one of the only ways we can improve that is revenue generating.
I can just clarify, for Jefferson Union, that workforce housing project is revenue neutral to the district's general fund. Sure. It's the rest of that site that is intended to be revenue generating. It's not employee housing, it's market rate and affordable for the
correct
public.
And that may be a component that we have because a potential commercial property is not really necessarily included in 2295. So there may be a couple things going on.
It can be or it cannot be, depending on whether we decide to move forward with it as one project or as two separate projects. Yeah, exactly.
Full disclosure, I have to ask, Mr. Katz, were you at the, we met at the CSBA conference in Anaheim, in December. After I heard you speak, I realized that. So truly, in full disclosure, I have to say, you kindly gave me your business card. I tucked it away with all of my information. I did not realize that you were part of this firm when I was sitting on the review committee.
Thank you, Trustee Smith. Okay. I think the last thing I'll say is really thank you all really for coming down and applying and staying up here, you know, and answering our questions. As you can tell, we're really passionate about this, and many of us have really, really strong concerns because, as you'll find out shortly, our community has even stronger concerns. So we are just the representatives of that. So, but what I am doing right now is looking at what's in front of me, which is not a development proposal. It's just a feasibility study. Right now, we need pros that know how to study this thing that we are really, really interested in and tell us what we know and what we don't know. And I appreciate the expertise you all will bring to that. And so I think I'm ready to hear more from the board here on if there's a motion that a board member wants to take.
I would make the motion, take this out of the motion. I like Oakland. I just want to say that. Because the only knock, it wasn't a knock against you. I know it's a distance thing, but it said negatives, none. Well, they're from Oakland. So, but that just means a distance thing. But I have a sister-in-law who lives there. It's a beautiful community. But I would like to go ahead and make the motion that we approve Senior Moment, you, to be, thank you, to do our feasibility study.
Is there a second?
Yeah, probably we need to couch that though, because we don't have a contract yet. We have their basic proposals. So you have an agreement already? Oh, okay, good, fine. Then that. All right, then my mistake.
Is that a second?
No.
Oh.
I was making.
I'll second.
It's second by trustees. I was looking for someone to make a second. Second by trustee Smith. All those in favor say yes.
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 Yes. That passes 5-0. Thank you all. Really, really appreciate it. Look forward to working with you all.
Before we leave the
Thank you for coming while you weren't feeling 100% either. And
before we leave the subject, I would ask for your permission to continue as the point person on this project and be the one on behalf of the board that's communicating with Brookwood Partners. I expect, of course, Mr. Olson will be doing so as well, but I'd like your permission to be the one talking with them, explaining things to them, answering their questions, et cetera, if that's okay with you all.
Yes, absolutely.
I have no concerns with that. I think the only I'll ask you later about the stakeholder group. I'm curious about the stakeholder group, if it will continue to meet.
The stakeholder, no, you mean our committee?
Yes, the internal committee that reviewed these.
Now that we have Brookwood Partners on, okay, Mr. Olson and I will be talking with them and getting them going and answering their questions, et cetera. Then the next thing our group will be doing is we will be meeting with selected choices of the 10 architects who have submitted their RFPs to us. Because while Brookwood has contacts that could provide us architectural cooperation with them in this part of it, our group has tentatively decided we would like to go with somebody local for various reasons. Local being Ojai, Ventura, Santa Paula, local. So we've narrowed it down to 4 or 5 out of the 10 that we think fit the bill. And so the next thing we're going to do as a group is we're going to get together. We're going to interview those 4 or 5, and we're then going to come back to you all with another executive summary and either recommendation or recommendations as to which one of the architects to pick to work with Brookwood. As they told you, they'll need those people on board within about 2 months from now, if I heard them correctly. And so we'll be doing that within the next month or so, and probably come back to you at next month's board meeting with the executive summary and recommendation as to which architect to go with. Does that answer the question?
Does answer the question. Okay, all right. I think That was it for that agenda. Thank you all once again. Look forward to working with you. Okay, now we move on to agenda 11.10, approval of quote from NIC Partners Incorporated for purchase of automatic door lock system for Matilla Gym. This is an action item. Pretty self-explanatory, but I'll
Yeah,
Dr.
I don't
Knox.
actually think I need to say much. I think the summary explains the need. So let me know if you have any questions.
I had a question, but maybe the answer is here. It does appear that we're not talking about just one lock to the front door. There are 6 different doors that are controlled by this feature, or 4?
Mr. Rogers is going to come up and yeah.
Good day. Yeah, there's 5 door locks. We're gonna do the front of the gym, the 2 side doors, and then the 2 locker rooms, but not the back doors of the locker rooms. Some of the feedback we just got from coaches is it'd be a difficult thing to get the kids dressed out, come back all the way around. This is the 2 locker rooms and side doors more for our staff, and then the front will be for events, rentals, etc.
So those will still be keyed, and maybe we'll just get new keys for those. Yeah.
Like 1 key.
Yeah, there you go.
Is this a keypad or a key?
Yeah, it does everything. So it could do key fobs, phone apps, and then PIN codes. Our preference at the moment is probably going to lean towards PIN codes because they can expire. So when we actually rent the space out for like a Sunday, I can have it expire at 12 a.m. on, Monday. So would help a lot with just getting people out of the space and keeping them out after their time is up.
Yeah, and this is off subject, but I presume this will start to spread to other buildings that also have these same multiple people have keys to them. I'm thinking of the auditorium over here too. Would be nice to go onto this system fairly soon.
Absolutely, yeah. The auditorium. So it's a little bit of a pilot. We have pretty good faith in it though, so we're not piloting to see if we like it. Eventually as well, the gymnasium, we have some interesting key combinations. Certain groups need access to the pool and the locker room, but not the gym. Others need the gym and the locker room, but not the pool. So it gets hard to make a key that can fulfill all those roles. So our poor folks who use the Nordhoff gym currently carry like 3 or 4 separate keys, depending on what they need to do, as opposed to like one code or a key fob or an ID card with an RFID in it that would get them through everywhere they need to go.
Question, keypad. Is it also changing the doors themselves, or is it just adding a keypad?
Spots, yes.
Because I wonder if you know what I'm referring to, and I don't want to say necessarily publicly about.
I know very well what
Okay,
we're referring
good.
to. Yes. Upgrades where they are warranted. Yeah. Also, the new system, part of it is door sensors as well. So even the doors that are not actually key fob or lockable, or unlockable, I should say, they will actually alert me if they've been open for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, etc. So we'll know if someone leaves. I'll get the text, and it also ties in with the camera systems. There's some other implementations we're not going to do right away, but make it a lot easier to trace, who's been in there when.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Okay, seeing no further questions, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved by Trustee Brainy, second by Trustee Halverson. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Passes 5-0. Thank you. Okay, last thing, future agenda items and parking lot report. Anything from trustees? Trustee Smith?
I have a question. It doesn't have to be in the parking lot, and I'm sorry if you've already told us this, but I don't recall. We hired SchoolWorks to review grant possibilities for us for solar installation and other kinds of projects. Have we used them, SchoolWorks?
This is something Alan White brought to us, correct? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
In October 23.
I'd have to do research and chat with him. I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, as we were talking about other grants, I'm wondering if they might be a resource for us for workforce housing, feasibility study, I don't know. Or grants.
I am interested in taking off working on a streamlining
Yes,
process for
that
the
would-
community to rent facilities. I am ready. Please remove it. Thank you so much to the administration for all that work.
Are we able to take off working on the operational costs and community use of the pool. I mean, we brought you the best update we could at the last board meeting. I don't know if you're wanting to keep that on there or.
I feel like the COC committee wants to know more from us, having
Yeah.
been to their recent
Yeah.
meeting, that the answers we gave them was not satisfying. I think they wanted more information, but I don't think we'll know that information.
I think we'll
until
be
we-
bringing you agreements in the near future,
Correct.
and that will be what you'll know.
Right.
Well, for example, the very first agenda item at Member Monchar's requests that we explore magnet programs, et cetera, that's been on there for 18 months, and we've yet to move on it. I think the community usage of the pool should stay on there until we've settled, until the pool is opened and we've got a community plan. Yeah.
I don't know if this needs to be here on the parking lot or where it needs to be, but I would like some kind of discussion about what the 2-and-2 conversation is with the city and how that's going and the items that are discussed on that. I have my own personal things that I think that we should be discussing. I think in that, I don't know if I can even talk about that right now, but anyway, I'd like those to, I don't know, at least start, or if they are going to start. I don't know. I guess that's the other thing. Do we know if it's going to start? Do we know? I have no idea. So I would love some kind of update on it. Okay, thanks. You're joking.
Well, and the 2-and-2 meetings are not necessarily in an open, a community, no. The only time we have done that before, but this is something separate. These are just office meetings.
Yeah, correct. We have work to do to organize that, so we'll take the next step.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll just remind also the climate action plan. I think Earth Day is in April.
I have it on my list.
Okay, no,
in April. I will do my best.
As you all
on my
Dr.
radar.
Knox. No, we really, really appreciate all the work you're doing. Okay. Seeing nothing else, nothing. Okay. I'm adjourning this meeting at 9:59 p.m. Thank you all.